Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to your third and final set of the day here on the first week of SCC. It's me and Mifflin again. Hi, Mifflin. It's been so long.
Yeah, it's been like, I think 5 minutes. I think the break was 5 minutes, Blazy. It's been 5 minutes. Okay, if you say so.
I missed you, man. I missed you too much. But let's have a look at what we've already seen and what we've got left. Elysium, Clay Soldiers, Just F6, Pandemonium, Snake Hunters, and Accounting Department all played yesterday. We don't care about them. But today we had some fantastic games here. We started off with Herculean Hooves and Sturdy Artisans, which led for a quick 2-0 for Sturdy Artisans there. You and I had a pretty interesting set between the Tiburones de Tijuana and the Winner Dogs. And now, Mifflin, we have the Average Joes versus the Fishies.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped for this set. There's some pretty big names in this one as well. Average Joe is comprised of Dingo, Dial out of support, Griff inside of that ADC role, and then you got guys like El Leon, who's been around the scene for an incredibly long time. A console champion, as well as got some SPL tenure under his belt as well, flanked by Ishtao and Uzi. El Leon and Uzi, one of the power couples of the SCC, and they're absolutely going to be looking to hold this one up today. But let's not sleep on the Fishies, right? They've also got some ex-SPL talent inside of Oceans back in the C9 days, as well as Kirmi and Chronic, who've been tearing it up in ranked. I mean, these guys are pretty nuts, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to see a couple of their highlights here, but like basically this whole team plays really, really well. But the big two that we want to highlight are probably Kimmy and Nayu, right? These two players really synergize well together. Kimmy especially can really run games from the jungle if he's feeling himself, which he really did during the SCC qualifiers. And if Kimmy is feeling himself, then you know that Nayu is going to be popping off as well, because these two players, as you said, just work really well together.
Yeah, they're a very aggressive core of this team. I think that the majority of fights are really played through Kirmi and Nehu. I mean, even take a peek at their god pools. It's Kirmi playing Susano, the Kalis, the Erlang Shens, gods who can engage and deal damage. And then Nehu is almost reminiscent of what we saw from Phase 1 of the SPL from Twig. He plays really aggressive jump-in style mages to kind of fit up with his jungle. So I think that in reality, we're going to expect to see the Fishies play through them.
For sure, and it's just always how this team has been. But going back to a similar analysis on the other side, the Average Joes, kind of that big players, just to hark back to what you were saying, Ishtao and Elion. These two players have been playing together for a long time, and they have some really good synergy as well. So I guess for both of these teams, it's kind of the mid-jungle synergy that we are focusing on here.
All right, well, hold on, Blazy. I don't love doing it, but I'm going to have to correct you here, bro. The power couple is El Leon and Uzi, and let's not get it twisted,
Sorry.
all right? These guys have been together for a minute. But you know what? You hit on something there, Blazy, that I think is actually incredibly important. Ishtao is a player that, for me, and chat, feel free to call me out, came out of nowhere. I had not heard of this guy. I hadn't really seen him in ranked, and then he really impressed me throughout the entirety of the SCC qualifiers. I thought, in reality, that it was going to be that these guys were just the Uzi Leon show, as the kind of we lined them up to be, but instead, Ishtao has consistently been a player who has been able to make plays on the map. He's got like insane slash lines. He's aggressive, and I've also heard that his communications are incredibly good as well. So he's certainly one to keep your eyes on.
For sure, I kind of got to agree with you. You know, Ishtao wasn't a name that I was familiar with either going into those qualifiers, and obviously I don't play NA ranked, so I wouldn't be able to share your surprise in not seeing him in those queues. But definitely one of the newer players to come out and really stand out within these two rosters. I'm super excited to see what these two teams can get up to together here, Mifflin. Are there any specific picks or comps that you're expecting these two teams to go for? We kind of touched on the junglers' preferences.
Look, man, I'm going to lean into the easy ones here. We just had a long set, so I got to give my brain a rest. Leon, very likely going to be looking for either Thoth or Yanis. If you've caught any Leon streams recently, you know that those are gods that he absolutely loves. Whereas Uzi is looking at gods like Odin and Nike and things along those lines. It's a very kind of fluid meta that this team has established for themselves, whereas the Fishies have been largely consistent throughout the entirety of their tenure as a team. Oceans loves gods like Ymir, like Khepri, things along those lines. And then you got guys like Kirimi who are playing the Erlang Shen, the Kali, and things along those lines as well, the Initiators type jungles. I'll be very excited to see how picks and bans shake out here.
We don't have to question it any longer, Mifflin, because we can jump straight into those P's and B's for game number 1 here and see if your facts are on the money. Fishies starting off here on the order side. Picks and bans. I think bans for the first stage will be pretty regular. Ao Kuang, something that we saw a lot of in the NA qualifying stage, so not really a surprise to see that taken away here alongside some more healers. Guan Yu. Not being wanted by anyone, apparently. Neither of these teams want Guan Yu.
Yeah, Guan Yu, very good right now. The defense shred from Talu Assault as well as the healing. Inside team fights already working with his passive means that he has to be inside of an engagement to really get the full value out of his heal, which means he really isn't suffering from the Season 8 nerf to out-of-combat healing. So that's why Guan Yu has seen a lot of priority in the last couple of weeks. But so far, bans going pretty smoothly. Sobek and Set going to round out the top 3 for Fishies, whereas Average Joe's go ahead and remove another healer inside of Yamoja. Wouldn't be surprised if we see Chang'e. Color me surprised it's actually Ymir. Seems like they've done their homework. They don't want Oceans getting on his comfort pick.
Perfectly fair. Chang'e isn't one of those picks that you want to pick up first anyway. There are a lot of ways that you can play around the Chang'e. She's more of a potent second or third pick. So I think it's a smart ban from them regardless, especially with Set being banned out here for Fishies. It kind of alludes to what they do and don't want. Speaking of things you don't want to be really picking up first, Geb, you want to tell me what this is about, Mifflin? Is this some NA secret I'm not aware of?
If it's an NA secret you're not aware of, I haven't heard about it either. Even when Geb was one of the most priority picks in the game, you still wanted to get him a little bit deeper in your draft because he's so easy to counter out that rollout, so easy to exploit with CC. Apollo does it just fine with the Mez. Athena can do it with a Confound. 2 picks that I think should have been much higher on the priority order here. I mean, doesn't get through most games nowadays, but now the Average Joes in the second pick slot get to pick it up themselves. Fishies, on the other hand, in trade, are going to pick up the Chernobog to match a little bit of that global presence, and potentially even a jungler here, or maybe a mid laner to try and limit what Leon is able to do in mid. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Morgan or maybe even a Yanis picked up to kind of deal with what he's able to do.
Well, Morrigan, it will be, potentially. This could be another production bamboozle. They did it to us earlier on today. It was. Look at that. I called it.
Nice read.
You can't, listen, fool me once. Can't fool me twice. Kukulkan. Gonna be the pickup here by the Fishies. That's really interesting. Not a character we see all too often. But, I mean, hey, if we think about it, kind of follows Nayu's general likes and dislikes for a character, right? Does it have a snipe? Yes, Nayu likes it. Okay, good. I'm glad that we clarified that. Ares is going to be the last pickup here for the Average Joe. Seeing a lot of play here today is the Greek God of War.
I think Ares might be a direct answer to this Geb. So easy it is to lock down Geb with those chains and make sure that he isn't able to escape out of these sticky situations throughout the early. So I think that really is the majority of what it is. Unless we see this Ares go into the jungle, in which case I'm just out of touch with the meta, and Ares jungle is just really good, apparently. But I think this Kukulkan pick is incredibly interesting because of how well it synergizes with Geb itself. Geb able to blink in with Cataclysm and then immediately go into the knockup and an unmitigatable CC, which means that it makes it that much easier to find Spirit of the Nine Winds or something along those lines. So I think it really is going to come down to how well is Fishies playing around this Geb. Is he playing proactively? Is he able to use that blink aggressively? And it's going to be pretty hard to do when you've got guys like Ares and Athena running it down at you.
Yeah, there's and there's even still 2 more slots that, you know, Average Joes could go into to make Geb's life even harder. Wouldn't be surprised if we could even see more of the Sunder pickup that we saw in the last set to really counter out that Geb, make sure he can't go anywhere. 2 assassins, 3 assassins found out here by these 2 teams as Naja, Camazotz, Susano, and Scylla get taken off the board here in this second round of bans. Really not wanting Average Joes to have a one of those powerhouse mid laners, but both of Elion's favorite gods are still on the board. Thoth is still available. Yanis is still available. So unless this is going to be some slippery Kukulkan soloed shenanigans, I think it's probably going to be one of those.
Tsukiyomi getting locked in by the Fishies here, likely going into that jungle role, which means that they have to pick up a solo laner still, unless maybe, potentially, we get shades of Season 4 Meerkat inside of this Geb solo. Instead, though, it's going to be a Cullen Hover. I'm going to go ahead and specify Hover, because I don't trust the Grayscale anymore. Finally locked in. I like this. It's a very consistent draft that the Fishies have rounded out for themselves. It makes sense. Every individual piece is kind of reminiscent of standard Smite. The only question marks, I think, are how well they're going to be able to deal with the engage factor that average Joes are bringing. I mean, their draft is absolutely ridiculous if they're able to pull a lead, be it from Confound Engage or the ability to Beads Burn with Ares Ultimate, or even the ability to just fly in the global presence that Apollo brings. And it's got to be a mistake if you're leaving Leon's Yanis up to the actual 10th pick.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's crazy that it got this far, right? Picks or bans, you know, why didn't Elion pick it up sooner? Scared he was going to get banned away from it, but I think that just shows that average Joes are confident in what Elion can and cannot play. They know that he would have been able to play whatever that they put him on, so they were just fine leaving it till the last minute here. But super interested to see how these two teams play out. I think this Athena's probably going to go for this solo lane again, like we saw in our last set, so no surprise there for me. Ares going into the support role. No such shenanigans coming out of Fishies, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the Fishies draft is pretty cut and dry. The only thing I can see average Joes doing to maybe switch things up is potentially have Ares go over into that solo lane, kind of reminiscent of what Deathwalker was doing back in Season 5, or if anything, that's it. That's really it. That's the only flex I think that average Joes have available to them. But I'm really excited to see how this Tsukiyomi is going to deal with this Yanis. It really does come down to, it's his job. He's the only one who can consistently close gap to this Yanis who uses the portal, Piercing Moonlight to chase him down, use the first ability to slow him, Kusarigama for the stun. It makes perfect sense, but is it easier said than done with all the peel average Joes has?
I think it absolutely will come down to that play, but to show us that play, let's jump on into game with the casters.
Thank you, Blazy and Mifflin. Been great working with you guys all day. It's Finch and Gore here as we move into game number 1. Our final set of the day, Fishies and Average Joes. Gore, it's been great working with you all day too. Same to Doug, the whole team. Let's go ahead and find this last set and enjoy all the action we're about to see. Now, I will say, Gore, it's always a point of personal pain to see Leon in mid and not in jungle, but I'm going to root for him there too. I know this Giannis could be good in his hands, and as Miff was saying, probably all of the pressure falls to Cure Me to keep him on lock.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? If you have Cure Me over here on the other, like Nehu, Chronic, Oceans, Ranjaro, they've all played at this level and they've all been adept at this level. But can you beat what is a carry squad when it comes to Leon, right? Like, I mean, he would single carry games. I think we even got to see him in the charity event that we had for Worlds. Pretty hard carrying his team going forward, and it's just that question mark of can you deal with him? And while you're dealing with him, also deal with Griff. And while you're dealing with them, also deal with Dingo. And also deal with Uzi. Like, it's just, there's so many factors to try and deal with over here. And they don't really get much lesser than each other, right? They're all right around the same level of play on the side of Average Joes. I think the biggest question, Finch, is on this team, who's Vince Vaughn, who's Justin Long, right? Because they're Average Joes. You know they had to name themselves this for a reason.
That's right.
And
yeah,
then
it's a big
who
dodgeball
on Fishies is Ben Stiller, right? Like, who's Ben Stiller on the other side? Because that is the real question here. It's not about who's going to win, who's going to lose.
Yeah, imagine coming in and not naming your team Globo Gem if you're Fishies. They really let us down.
They should change their name. Wait, petition next week. Fishies is Globo Gem.
Oh, whoever Average Joe's playing is always Globo Gem. That's just
true.
But I'm right there with you, man. I think Uzi and Leon really have to put this team on their backs. Those are the guys I think of with really high-level experience of being able to compete at the absolute best level. Not to say that Griff, who did it for a long time on console and has transitioned to PC greatly, can't also be a part of that, but those guys have got to be the leaders for me. If Average Joe's is not just going to try and win this tough set against Fishies, but eventually against everyone else here in the NA SCC, and even hopefully for them beyond. They're going to need those guys, I think, to be the driving force. And so far, Uzi a little bit behind Chronic. This matchup, this Athena-Kakulin matchup, I think it's going to look like that a lot in these early levels.
Yeah, that's not an easy one to win if you're Athena. I think a Guardian, like Guardian versus Warrior, Guardians are not there to win the lane. They are there to be the frontline later, right? Like, if you do win the lane, it's an added benefit. If Athena starts popping off and has an insane momentum shift, that's awesome. But if she doesn't, you're not crying about it. She's just going to be, well, not necessarily an ult bot. That's not really where she's going to fit in, but a team fight bot, right? Like, you're not here for your lane, your lose lane, win game mentality. I'm going to farm so I can get items, so I can go in and get tanky, and so I can taunt, so I can be the front line my team needs right up there with Dingodile. And I actually like that style, right? It is one of those things that sacrifices some of your pressure. You might lose that tower. You might lose out on gold because of it. But you sacrifice that for something later in the game, whereas Chronic will still be able to apply that, but Chronic is much more of a bully style, right? This is what Cullen wants to do. He wants to get in the back line, he wants to make your Apollo feel depressed, he wants to make Leon question his life because he is back there and destroying them, and that is what Chronic is going to try and do. I don't know how much success he's going to have. I feel like everybody on the side of Average Joe's has their life figured out, so maybe no existential crises coming out of this, but at least making them rethink their strategy.
Yeah, making Leon's life miserable has got to be not just Kirby, but everyone's top priority, because we know what he can do in terms of taking over a map. At least out of jungle, we got to see a good amount of what he could do in the mid as well throughout these qualifiers and how dominant he was there. And Giannis is about as good as it gets in terms of mid laners right now, so I don't think you're feeling bad with him at all. Now take a look at Nehu. Gore, we have not seen a ton of Cuckoo Khan lately, and take a look, he's got the Book of Thoth, which we all know synergizes so well with his passive. Can this Cuckoo get it done?
I want to say yes, mainly because, again, like Tornado, he's always going to have an incredibly solid clear. You're never really that stressed out about that. You're not really worried about his survivability, although he did take some nerfs to his Slipstream or Slither, whichever one it's called, to try and get away, and that is where things get iffy.
Well, there is a bit of a gate coming through. Dingodile is the early target. Oceans rolls in as well, and I don't see a way out for this Ares. I don't know if Griff can make it happen either, narrowly escaping back towards the safety of his own team. Looks like a little bit of presence there from Leon's portal, and Ishtao coming through were enough to deter. But first blood to Fishies. Hard to start any better than that.
Ishtao looked like if there was another portal there, he wanted to go in. He wanted that fight a little bit more. That's just unfortunate. Like, again, Ares falling a little bit behind. Now that he's dead, you can see it a little bit more obviously. But Geb ticked up to 5, Oceans hit 5, and you were still sitting at 4 if you're Dingodile. If you have your ult there, I don't know that changes too much for you. You probably still die. But maybe you die in a more, I guess, just fabulous fashion, right? Like, nothing necessarily changes for you. But I think that's something that is going to be big. Those ults coming online just slightly earlier for Fishies, and that gank coming online just a little bit faster for Kirmi opens things up. And we didn't even get to see the thing I was going to talk about when it comes down to Nehu, which is Spirit of the Nine Winds, because at the end of the day, when you're playing Kukulkan, Khan, first off, also rocking the OG skin that was just recently. I believe that was during the birthday event that you had to unlock this. So beautiful that he's going to be rocking that one, because it does bring me back. That being said, if I say Ao Kwang at any point in this cast, I want you to know it is entirely because of this skin and no other reason. But the Spirit of the Nine Winds is 100%, I think, what he's going to bring. Leon, Giannis, yes, technically you can use that ult for secure, but nowhere near as good as what you're going to get out of a Kukulkan. The same thing can be said for damage-wise. It's just a lot to deal with in the middle of the lane. These are wider, it's maybe easier to juke, so I'm not sure that it's going to be as easy to lock down and confirm, but I still think it's a lot of damage and it's something to be scared of.
Yeah, especially in these more narrow jungle pathways with Cataclysm set up, there's almost no chance he misses. Maybe even a stun just like that from Kirmi, but a little bit too late on the trigger is Nehu. That's one of the ones where Nehu, I think, has to ult before the stun even lands if they want that one to work, as there's the pull. Nehu pulled back in. But Dingodile, largely here alone, finally gets some backup from Uzi. There's through space and time. Leon wants to get involved, but they still haven't put enough damage on Ocean, who finally drops to get Ishtao on the board and now escaping through the portals, but not enough to get away from Chronic, who is relentless. Maybe Ishtao has the slow, does stop him from finding the knockup actually onto Dingodile, and now they have a chance to turn this around with a big taunt. But Ishtao gave up on it, let Uzi do it alone, and now in comes Leon to see if they can keep this waterfall going.
Yeah, Ishtao's just trying to stay alive here. Rinjaru goes into the backline, cleans up one just around the corner there from the Ares. He's not going to be able to find that, but they're so low.
Uzi with a double kill off the reach passive and core. This is Apollo and Chernobyl getting involved early, rotating to fights and using these ultimates. 6 kills already. We're not even 7 minutes in.
Look, what's the point of a global ult if you're not going to use it, right? Like, if Rinjaru's going over there, Griff's going over there, and vice versa, and that's how it should always work. The only thing I see that Griff has done wrong is the fact that his starter item is in his second slot, and that is going to tilt everyone that I just pointed it out to. That's the only thing that's really gone alpha. But I really like the way that you see Rinjaru go into that, because I will argue the most mental strengthening thing, at least for me, in Smite, is when you walk out of a fight with like 1 HP, right? Like, if I'm Dingo there, getting out of there alive, I feel invincible for a few seconds afterward, because there's no way I should have gotten out of that, even though maybe it was Peel from my team, whatever. And I think that's something that's not necessarily what you want. If Average Joes are already kind of a favored team in this matchup, you don't want them feeling invincible. So I like that Rinjaru ults over just to make sure he can confirm a kill, and it's even better that he gets it onto Ishtao of all people, right? Who cares about killing Dingodile? He's a support. Kill their jungler and shut them down, especially Nemesis, who the longer she's ahead, which right now it's a level lead, that means that Chronic, that means that Oceans are going to have a tough time to deal with that. Ares and this Nemesis kind of combining up against a Geb means that his health shred and shield shred should be very high up there. Same thing. Chronic isn't going to be able to survive long against this front line that is there for Average Joes. And that just means that Griff and Leon are going to do a ton of damage later on. I'm excited to watch how the damage numbers go up, because I expect by the end of the game they're going to be pretty high up there.
Yeah, they should have nearly free reign. Take a look at Uzi. He's about a level and a half ahead of Chronic. Not quite being displayed as well now that Chronic's hit up to level 9, but shouldn't be long before Uzi crosses over to level 11. I think getting a double kill and 2 assists when instead Chronic is just forced to kind of take a seat and wait before he can come back into the fight has really helped out over here. We know you're not expecting your Guardian solo to get ahead like this, but now that Uzi is, we really got to see him be impactful, using that ultimate to get involved in these fights all the time, making life hard on Nehu in particular, not giving him a lot of room to breathe, and then punishing these divers as a great beach from Leon gets him out of trouble. Then they bring through the big Cuckoo Khan ultimate to try and find one more kill, but it's Dingodile that ends up low, uses the portal, and is right next to Nehu, who drops the spit on him point blank. That's Dingodile being sit back home in a box. Now what about Rinjaru? Use the dash to catch up to Leon, and now they find a second. Huge for Fishies to get back into this game.
Now, you could feel that. Rinjaru was going for style points. He wanted the kill with the dash, but not able to find that one. Has to go for the consolation prize of closing the gap. Either way, I think that is just heads-up play from Nehu, right? You see that Dingodile doesn't have a whole lot of backup here. All you have to do is throw your Spirit of the Nine Winds around there. That's where everyone is going to try and line up and where their damage is going to be. And it's something that you can do. It's easy to practice an assault if you happen to get Kukul Khan and there's an Ares on the other side. Like, it transcends, I should say, game modes, is that combo and dealing with that ult the exact way that Nehu just did. And it just showcases again why he's so difficult to lock down. Ao Kuang doesn't have a dash, he doesn't have a leap, he doesn't have portals that go through wall, he just kills you faster than you can kill him.
It's Ishtao's turn to get aggressive, but Kirmi has the Geb shield there to give him backup. But Dingodile just trying to make it work with the body blocks, it's not enough, and Kirmi gets out of there. And we're starting to see some of this Geb value. He has been getting highly prioritized all day here in North America. He was first overall picked here. We've seen him picked top 3. We've seen him picked over Giannis. So, I mean, if people are going to be doing things like that with Geb, prioritizing him that high in the draft, then we have to see a lot more of that. These critical Geb shields, critical cataclysms, it all has to be nearly perfect because of how early on you're prioritizing him over other stuff. And so far, Oceans has looked great.
And if you can continue this pressure, it's one of those things I said, I like seeing Geb. I don't know if I like seeing him first pick, but if you can make him feel like a first pick god, I won't argue it as much. I still think there's other, maybe more valuable picks than Geb in that top slot. But right now, North America specifically seem to love this god. Again, he's one of my favorite supports to play. It's just making him work that's the hard part. And right here, if he gets a good Cataclysm, that's all you need.
And there it is, Cataclysm flattens Ishtao, even gets Dingodile on the way through, and that's the combo that's going to be trouble all game. Even a chance now for Kirby to get the kill on the Dingodile. Of course he does. It's 2 of them going the way of Fishies, and if you are Average Joes, you got to come up with a way to deal with this Cataclysm into this Kukulkan ultimate, because so far, it's seeming like just an easy, perfect combo for them to execute.
And you gotta admit, like, there's certain things. Ishtao and Dingodile were lined up there. You're a giant circle if you're dropping this Cataclysm. There's not a lot of points on that circle where you're always going to hit 2 people in a straight line, right? So that was maybe a little bit of luck coming through. Of course, Nehu, like, it's a wide line. It's not necessarily you can only draw 1 diameter across. You've got a little bit to work with there. But even still, it's just impressive how much they're lining up, and that's the thing that's going to be most difficult. Average Joes, it feels like one of the better ways to combat this, outside of just, beads and, well, having some sort of CC immunity, whether it comes from a magic bubble in the Magi's Cloak, or if you have to consume your own beads and things like that, getting CCR as well, just to escape it a little bit faster. it feels like maybe lining up, making Nehu choose a target so that ult can only hit one of you is going to be a big thing. Positioning in these fights when Geb has ult might be the biggest problem.
Yeah, I also just don't think they can be second to start any more fights, right? You have got to make Nehu priority number 1 if you're average Joes. That's how you stop the cannon from firing, is you go to it first and put pressure on when it can come out. Don't let him casually wait on the setup from Oceans and then fire it in. And what about Oceans? We haven't talked about yet this guy and how long he's been playing Smite and how he's been forced to move from role to role, and he's been adaptable every time. Here he is in support after all this time, looking comfortable on this Geb pick and making life easy for Nehu.
Yeah, I remember seeing when Oceans came in to be a carry, I think it was in the Pro League even, like years and years ago. It was kind of like, okay, wait, who's this guy? And everyone was like, oh yeah, no, trust us, Oceans is incredibly solid. And just guess what? Years later, Oceans is still incredibly solid, but let's see if they can get this Fury.
Through space and time comes through, doesn't get the Fury, but forces them to back off. So we're waiting on Nehu to drop the big ultimate. That's got to be it, but everyone's hiding back through space and time, so it only ends up clipping Leon at the back. Oceans drops the Cataclysm as well, but this is my point. They broke up the combo, and it was less effective, so Oceans forced to retreat. Average Joes do a good job defending the Fury, even though they don't claim any lives, but it looks like Fishies want to hang around and look for more. Maybe not, kind of just at this point, Rinjaru. So good work by Average Joes to defend.
And you have to imagine, I think similarly to what you were saying earlier, Nehu needs to be a pretty big priority target, force him to ult sooner and when he's uncomfortable, as opposed to getting a good lineup for the team. But the same could be said for Oceans, right? You have to think about Cataclysm, especially early on in a team fight. It does percentage as it levels up, even more percentage. I think it's 15 to 35% as it levels up. And it does that based on your current health, not your total health, but whatever you have. So at the beginning of a fight, when everyone's healthy, that's when you're going to get the most bang for your buck. If you can force Oceans to either use it in an uncomfortable spot or use it a little late in the fight where it's not going to get as much done, especially right now where at max he's getting level 2 out of it, which is like 20% or something like that, you're just not going to get anywhere near there. Yeah, so 20% right now, it's just not as worthwhile. If you can make him burn this when you're half HP, you're not really feeling the hit as hard as you would if you are max HP.
No, not at all. So good work by Average Joes to at least keep things close, and they are close. Even a slight gold lead for Average Joes, despite the kill lead being in favor of Fishies. And they still have a lead over in solo. Still behind, though, are the Average Joes in jungle and in support, just about a level that Ishtao is behind Kirimi and Dingodile is behind Oceans. But this next Gold Fury fight could be important if we keep seeing them coming over and trying to force that to be an issue in this game. A lot of the times, today and yesterday, we've seen the Gold Fury not be a real big fight. A team takes a fight elsewhere and just comes back and grabs the Fury as a reward. If we keep seeing fighting over it, then that could really dictate the pace of this.
And it really has been, you know, again, like you had highlighted earlier, 10 to 12 minutes, you see that Scorpion go down, so you have to wait a little bit before the Fury spawns up. But I go back to an earlier point. Nehu with ult has better secure in this game than pretty much anybody else in trying to confirm this, but that's way too early.
Well, he's used it. The objective confirmed, so if I'm Average Joes, I love this fight. They pull in Oceans. At the very least, his life will be forfeit. But if you only give up your support for Fury, I think Fishies is still happy with that trade.
100%. I can't think of anything better. Like, as a support, you get used to that mentality. My life is worth nothing, and anything you can get, if it's just me, is worthwhile.
But more scrapping.
It's a little different.
Yeah, they're still looking to fight, and they managed to find Chronic. They might even get Kirimi as well. How have Fishies found a way to give back more on the back of a really good start to this fight? It's Uzi in under the Tier 1, but can't find a taunt. So this Tier 1 tower is still standing and healthy, but yes, it's Ishtao lurking around to the side. Hello, Kirimi. Didn't expect me to be here, dashing right on through beads to get through the stun. Leon gets Nehu. Ishtao puts down Kirimi, and just like that, Average Joes put a big price tag on that Gold Fury.
Yeah, that changes things up. A 4 for Fury is not necessarily worthwhile. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite of that. You can see even in the gold, it's about 2,000 swinging in favor of Average Joes even after that Fury is picked up. So you get the gold in your pocket, you're able to do something, and you can actually spot where the Gold Fury was and where the fight afterward was, because there's a giant spike in favor of Fishies and then a huge downward slope on the graph that goes right back in favor of Average Joes. The thing that I got out of those graphs, though, is more the experience, which is all in favor of Average Joes. 2 levels in both. Whoa, everywhere? I mean, what? Yeah, that's 7,400 experience.
That's nuts.
And what? I saw 2 levels in solo, 2 in jungle. I think I saw 2 in mid. It's just ridiculous. There's even overall in the bottom lanes. But I mean, having that big of a lead in 3 different roles, now 3 levels up there for Uzi. That's what you want after a bad lane, because you're Athena, you're not necessarily going to beat Kukulkan in lane. You're level 18. You don't care what this Kukulkan is doing because he means nothing to you.
Yeah, look at the build so far. Mystical Mail, Pridwin, a lot of prots here. So not only is Uzi going to be getting off these taunts very effectively, but you're taking damage from that, from the Mystical Mail when you're around. There's no chance that you're killing Uzi at this point unless you just hard commit everything Neho has to him, and it's hard to win the fight afterwards if that's what you do. You've got to find a way now, if you're Fishies, to get past this taunt and make the rest of Average Joe's your priority targets, especially Leon and Griff if you can get to them. But it's just going to be so difficult now. We thought the big problem in this game was going to be dealing with Nehu and Oceans, but Joe's have found a way to do it, and now, look at this! Now putting some pressure on Nehu back in the middle lane, can't quite find him. Cataclysm forced out early, and a completely whipped ultimate from Nehu as well. That makes him a sitting Duck Leon. Point-blank shotgun blast with the ultimate. Dingo Dial finds Oceans as well, and now Renjaru running for his life as Griff ready to get aggressive. Suddenly Average Joes have completely flipped the script. That's 3 for 0 across the map.
And we can see Kiermi's right here, but that tier 1 tower is going to go down. Pyromancer on the other side. I thought Kiermi was going to go in, but no, that's a 5-level gap. No way you're going to go in on that. I'm not going to fight a level 19 Apollo. I'm out of there. I don't want anything to do with him. And that is where things get iffy.
Wow, he's
with one
ulting over.
ult, and I think that's, what Griff is up to. This should be a free fire giant.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and Gore, I don't even know if I'd call it free. Boy, did they earn it, right, by fragging in the middle lane, but you're right, no one's contesting it here. If I'm Chronic, there's a 0% chance I step up there in this or any other life, because I just don't have a shot. I mean, we spent the first 10 or so minutes of this game really worried about what Oceans and Nehu were accomplishing time after time, and Gore, it hasn't come up a single time since, because Nehu or Oceans have been the initial target of Average Joe's aggression.
Yeah, they've been really, really solid at targeting them early on, right?
Yeah.
Leon has been shotgun blasting him any opportunity he gets. Like, it feels like he's saving his cooldowns specifically for that burst of damage. Ishtown knows who he wants to slow down, and that's the biggest thing. I said it against Cuckoo earlier, and that is that because Slipstream, or again, whatever his 2 is called, I should look it up just to make sure I'm right. Either way, it was nerfed a little bit a while ago because he was getting away too easily. He had a little bit too much going for him. But once that slow from Nemesis gets clapped onto him, good luck getting out of there. Like, if your ult is going to get whiffed, you're not going to escape. So Nehu, as well as Oceans, very easy to take down. Oceans won't get that CC immunity until rollout has ticked for a little bit. So if they can slow him and kill him before that CC immunity comes through, then he's not going to get out of there either. So I think it's the 2 targets that they've found a decent and easy way to lock down, and Nemesis just happens to be the best counter to him so far.
And I'm not trying to say that Ishtown and Dingle Dial have been struggling in this game. They haven't, but look at the KDAs of Uzi, Leon, and Griff, the ones that we highlighted early on as being keys to the success of this Average Joe's team. And they've been absolutely contributing it, whether a collective 8, 1, and 13, something absurd like that. I mean, it's been everything you could have wanted from these 3 leaders. And Ishtow and Dingle Dial have done their jobs well, too. Ishtow has caught out Kiermi a couple of times, and Nehu, as you covered. Dingle Dial has been the setup man and the fall guy when someone has to fall at the end of it. They've all done their jobs perfectly, as it looks like the Fury going to go to Average Joe's for free as well. That's an Oni Fury, so well timed. That can contribute to their push efforts as well.
Yeah, and honestly, I think this just comes down to the fact, as much as, like you said it, when you look at the KDAs, I think Ishtow has had a pretty big part of this. Nemesis ult,
yes,
even though he's maybe not getting the kill, like, again, he's making it a lot easier to shred these frontliners, and who else to do the damage but someone like Griff or Leon, right? So I think it is lovely to see this team working the way it is, just because of the setup they have. And Uzi is the one that is maybe catching me off guard the most. First off, he went Warrior's Axe, 4th item, and he upgraded it just now after his Brigwin, after getting a couple of tiers of that cloak. And it's going to be a lot of protection. It's going to be a lot of health and CCR. And it's just interesting to see him go it because he waited a little bit longer than you see. We've been talking a lot about these starter items and where you get them. Sometimes we see mid laners skip it at the beginning entirely. Look at Nehu right now, doesn't have one at all, and they'll get one at level 20 because the level 20 upgrades are really helpful. And I think it's interesting that Uzi delayed it, but didn't wait until the end of the game. He knew what he wanted, he just needed to be in a good position, and with a 3-0-6 lead, I think going towards the Warrior's Axe in that tree was just such a brilliant idea for him.
Yeah, I think he landed on the Hero's Axe upgrade here, which means that if he's around someone that gets hit by, let's say, Geb Cataclysm, he's putting that shield on him exactly to make it so that they're even taking less damage effectively, or making it so they can withstand more damage. That's so critical in a game like this where Oceans' setup has been so important that Ozzy's able to provide a little bit of extra backup to him, even if he can't get there himself to prevent the damage from happening. He can at least make them healthier, and it's just a great call from him overall. Just a great game from him. 3-0-6 on your solo lane, Athena. Ozzy making it look easy.
Yeah, that's not easy to do. If you've played any supports or any Guardians in solo, yeah, maybe you'll get 6 assists, and you should be able to rack up assists pretty easily if your team's getting kills. But being 3-0, as well as, again, it was a 3-level, 4-level lead over there for them. I mean, if you want to look at it, he's 5 levels up on the support on the other side. Not necessarily something out of the ordinary, but, I mean, just very solid, I think, from Average Joe's. Their farming has been on point. But we're starting to hit that point, Finch. Level 20 now for Chronic, level 20 there for Renjaro. That giant experience lead is going to disappear when you see Fishies hit that level 20. The gold will still exist, and right now that's over 10,000. It's 12K even, and that is a ridiculous amount to try and overcome. But you will have no level advantage. There's not going to be that distinct advantage of being 3 levels, 4 levels, 5 levels up on your opponent.
Oof. Yeah, Chronic taunted and hit by the Nemesis ultimate. Not enough to take care of him. Geb shield put on, plus the Rage transformation means Average Joe's are going to back up. Chronic prevents himself from triggering it, vents some of that anger, and he'll still have that in the cards later on. And they're going to need it. They're down 12,000 gold for this Fire Giant fight. Gore, what's your call here? Do you want them to put up some kind of defense, or should they just be waiting under their Phoenix for the inevitable and trying to defend there?
Put some hard bodies between Nehu and the Fire Giant so they can't dive him, and just hope that Spirit of the Nine Winds can steal it. I don't think you have a lot of opportunities to get in there and start the Fire Giant, but again, I think Nehu presents a unique destroyer of dreams in that he can throw one Spirit of the Nine Winds and find a Fire Giant steal, and that could turn the fight around. Again, you might just steal it and lose the fight thereafter, but there is something to be said about the power of this Kukul Khan. I almost said Ao Kuang there. The Kukul Khan that is coming through, rocking the OG skin. And this Fire Giant is going to be important. Still not enhanced, but if you get the swing and survive on the side of Fishies, it could be big.
I like this. Chronic has moved in. Leon is the target and able to follow him through his Kirmi, but Griff catches him on his path and puts Kirmi down. Doesn't give him a chance to find any more damage. I love this. Average Joes are forcing the fight. They're not giving Fishies a chance to steal as 2 get taunted in. There lands Griff as he continues to output the damage, forces Nehu to use the relic just to survive. There's the dash in, and your tornadoes mean nothing. Griff grabs his 4th kill of the day, and Average Joe says, Fire Giant, we don't need it. We're just going to go ahead and take the win.
Oh no, I'm tornadoed. Anyway, moves right on with his life. Griff has no qualms about that. Having a full Devo's Gauntlet, the upgraded... Oh no, he went for Cloak anyway. He didn't even go for the Death Stole. So he's not worried about his sustain. He knows he's going to have that health. He's perfectly fine pushing it. And like you said, this could be in. I mean, you've got 10 seconds till Kirmi's up, but Kirmi didn't do a whole lot during that last life.
No, he didn't. Let's see if they can pull it off. Some of these members are a bit low, especially Dingo Dial, but no, the damage, it's way too much. The cleanest game we've seen all day long came just now from El Leon and his boys on Average Joes and Fishies. I'm telling you, this is a team that I think that with some time can be strong, but they weren't able to prove it here, were they?
I mean, we got to see it at the very beginning, right? A little slip. The Kukul Khan and the Geb combo looked really, really good together, and then it just hard tanked after they figured out how to deal with it. Like you said, there was a point where we were really worried about it, and then it didn't come up again until we were saying it just wasn't working anymore. And that's where I think things really started to fall apart for them. Once that combo was broken by Average Joes, it didn't seem like they had much else to fall back on.
No, it didn't, and it was just very, very clean on the other side from Average Joe's. Everything seems calculated. They moved around clinically, and this is a really easy Game 1 win for them. We'll see if they can do it again in Game 2 on the other side of this quick break.
Welcome back to the desk, ladies and gents. After that pretty, what's the word that you're going to use for it, Myth?
Wow, you really put me on the spot. You said it like I had said a word that I was going to use. I guess one-sided, if you really had to ask.
Well, we'll use that then. After a one-sided game, how are you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good. It didn't happen to me, right? I just got to watch it like everyone else in Twitch chat. I'm sure maybe the Fishies aren't feeling nearly as good about it, but Average Joe's certainly earned this dub. I think, if anything, it's P's and B's, man. We're going to be adjusting those.
Yeah, for sure. We kind of, like, touched on this at the start. You know, this comp from Average Joe's was very much big, you know, big CC, big damage, big rotation power. There's a lot of components in this comp that's really, really good. Meanwhile, Fishies just kind of had the Smite comp. You know, they had a mage, a warrior, an ADC, etc., but nothing really stood out to me about that comp.
I think the main issue I saw was that the Fishies were willing to take fights in the early game, and every single time they were outnumbered. I mean, you're not going to out-rotate an Apollo. You're not going to out-rotate an Athena or a Yanis. They're always going to have the numbers advantage, Average Joe's that is, unless you wait until the late game and take the engagement in a tried and true 5v5. But by the time that the Fishies had made it to an actual 5-on-5, they were already so far down. Gold Furies, Pyromancers, Towers had already separated this match beyond belief.
Yeah, and you can kind of, like, see that in the slash lines here, right? Like, just not really many kills coming up from the Fishies. Deaths all across the board. Ranjaro really the only one to avoid the oncoming slaughter, and, well, the damage numbers are there as well. Only Neu peaking above 10, double digits in the damage. So it was a rough one for Fishies, yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough one to be sure, but there were a couple of moments where it looked like they really had it together. In particular, Oceans and Nehu kind of working together to line up those Spirits of the Nine Winds. There was a couple of really good snipe attempts as well. There were times where I felt like had they had a slightly stronger draft, or a draft that could keep up with the rotations of Average Joe's, where they might have been able to secure some small wins, some small skirmishes. So I think that we're definitely going to see some adjustments in the P's and B's, likely starting in the B's.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe look to ban away this Athena. We've seen how strong it is more than enough times, all right? We've seen how strong Athena is. We get it. Just take it away. We don't want to see it anymore. But other things, you know, Apollo, very, very strong as well. I think that there are a couple things that definitely need to be changed about this draft. Is there any direction that you want to see Fishies kind of steer their way into?
I want to see them take away some of the comfort picks from the enemy team. I don't want Leon allowed to rock his Yanis again. I don't want Uzi rocking an Athena, or if you have to let one of those through. Don't let them have every single global available in the game. Outside of that, continue doing what you're doing best. Allow Kirmi to play something aggressive to get you off on the right foot, and then maybe we see the set to go to a game 3.
Well, let's jump into it and see if they can adjust and make this second game a little bit easier on themselves. Fishies, once again, opting for that order side, going straight into the Ares ban. They did not have a good time against it last game, so I do not blame them whatsoever. Get it out of here.
Yeah, that Gab was certainly struggling, trying to deal with all those chains coming his way, just locking him down for like 15 seconds straight of cripple. Ares, absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, I said they were going to change it up in the Bs. I didn't think it was going to be this drastic. Fishies go ahead with another target ban with the second one. Yanis getting taken off the table. No shot. Leon gets to pilot that one again. Whereas the Average Joe's staying largely consistent, going to go ahead and ban out that Guan Yu. But paired up with like a Kolkin ban, seems like Nehu left an impression.
Yeah, the Average Joe's definitely not going to be the only ones respect banned against. I think that's got to feel pretty good for the Fishies. I know, you know, whenever you get to those scrim levels, those competitive levels, having that ban against you specifically as a player can feel really good. Almost a small ego boost. So maybe that'll put a little smile on Neu's face. But Yamoja and Set are going to be the last two bans out here. Pretty standard stuff. Fishies still really not wanting to go for this Set pick. They are in that first pick spot. But once again, hovering. Don't trust production. It was a Sobek. Starting once again for this Guardian first pick. Now, Sobek is definitely higher up there on pick priority, but still first pick?
Yeah, I just think it's interesting. Maybe the Fishies are looking to counterpick whatever the average Joes are taking, but you know the average Joes are going to take the best stuff, right? Apollo going to go ahead and be that first slot overall for them yet again. Look, I like Sobek a lot. I really do. I think it's a very consistent pick. I think you can flex it in either solo or support, which is going to keep the enemy team guessing. But it just feels like they really are missing out on an opportunity to pick safe top-tier picks like Apollo or anything along those lines. Ymir going to round out the top 2 for the average Joes. That's a very strong pick if the Sobek were being flexed into the solo lane. That takes away one of Ocean's best choice as well as just a strong meta pick in Season 8. So I really like what the average Joes have done here.
Yeah, for sure. Moving away from that Athena as well. Actually, well, I say that still very much the door left open for Athena that could be moved into that solo lane role still. So still keep your eyes open for them to run back that very strong pick. But Cthulhu and Anna getting locked in here for the Fishies. Cthulhu probably more likely to be going into that solo lane role. We saw it from... we saw it from somebody earlier. Aquarius, that's the one. Anha also a very, very strong ADC to have in that 1v1 boxing match. So far, Fishies looking not so bad. Ao Kwang, though, going to be the final lock-in for Joes. That's scary.
Yeah, that's essentially saying, hey, this game's now on a ticking time bomb. If we're allowed to make it to the 25-minute mark again, you won't see much past it. This Ao Kwang absolutely going to be one of the strongest late-game gods you can lock in. And it's why it was banned in the first phase last time around by the Fishies, left available this time. Fishies actually banned Ao Kwang and Ymir in Game 1, and now Average Joes are running both of those picks. That's exactly how that one pans out. But some more adjustments in the second phase of ban. It's Athena and Artio being removed by the Fishies, 2 of Ozzy's favorite picks. And Average Joes go ahead and target out the Kamazots and the Awilish, trying to keep their eyes on the jungle.
I think that's really smart from the Average Joes. I'm not really sure where the Artio ban came from. I know that it was one of Ozzy's favorite characters, but you know what else Ozzy really enjoys playing? This Kakulin. This Kakulin is an absolute menace, and it has been since qualifiers rolled around. I think we saw Ozzy maybe take 5 deaths total during SCC qualifiers on this pick. It's quite something to behold. Morrigan is going to get locked in here, 4th pick for the Fishies. So that's actually pretty interesting. It's going to give them a lot of utility, a lot of different options that they can go, especially with what Joes might lock in last here. That Apollo is one to keep an eye on as well. Will give Morrigan a lot of rotationary power. With the Tsukiyomi here as well, having 2 sets of laser beams could be pretty scary.
Or even just the double Thulu, right? Like Cthulhu is what we were calling it the other week. I think that this draft from the Fishies is largely similar in playstyle that we saw in Game 1 in that it's kind of pretty standard. They're going to wait until they're able to group up as 5 in the late game and then play around this Cthulhu, this CC, this Paragon of crowd control, have Sobek peel out for the backline, and then Morrigan and Tsukiyomi are likely going to act as solo agents trying to pick out whoever they can. Whereas the average Joes, again, have a pretty unique playstyle. Now they've got a pocket Aphrodite. This is actually a disgusting draft, by the way. I think every single one of their 5 picks has been banned at some point today, if not against them by other teams against others. This draft is dirty. It's super hard to deal with. I said it was already on a ticking time bomb because of the Ao Kwang. Pocket an Aphrodite on that, you might be able to shave 5 minutes off that bomb.
You're absolutely right, Mifflin. Actually, the only exception to that rule is the Kakulin. I don't think he has been banned out yet today, but definitely a very scary team. Pretty much, I think we could go blow for blow and single out some reasons at the very least why each of these gods is best in role, right? Apollo, best ADC. Ymir, arguably one of the best supports. Ao Kwang, same situation. Kakulin, Afro fit that bill as well. So it's really going to have to come down to execution for me on whether or not Fishies can pull up against this comp.
But the Fishies do have a pretty significant early game advantage. If they're able to leverage Tsukiyomi just having more damage and pressure than Ao Kwang throughout the early, that could be one way they establish a lead, which should lead to early Gold Furies off the back of immense CC potential from a Cthulhu rotation, or even on her's early damage potential if he elects to go for the Ichabel build that's been pretty popular recently. There are a lot of ways that they can exploit the average dose throughout the early. Even Ymir, a god who is pretty strong in the early as far as damage goes, is on a double-edged sword, a lacking mobility guardian, pretty easy to shut down.
Well, we will have to see how these two teams come head-to-head. Potentially the last game on the line here for Fishies. Can they pull it to a game 3? Let's find out.
Thanks once again on the dash. Still Finch and Gore here as we move in to this critical game 2. Average Joe's looking to put this set to bed, and Fishies looking to extend the life of it to at least a third game. To only a third game. It's a best of 3. Gore, you heard what they were talking about this Average Joe's draft, man. This Ao Kwong, this Aphrodite, this Amir, this Apollo. Those are all some really top-tier picks. Kakulin as well. And Fishies don't have a bad draft either. I mean, Oddher, Sobek, Morgan, Tsukiyomi, Cthulhu, those are all top-tier picks too. It's just more on Average Joe's side of eventually, I don't know how you deal with it.
Yeah, I think the thing is, last year we were talking a lot about how do you deal with Cthulhu, and the answer was realistically coming down to, well, you kill him fast with Nemesis or you pray, right? Like afterward, you hope for the best. But Ao Kwong is a unique answer to that as well. I think he's going to be able to bring a really fast burn to him. You go ahead and throw Uzi behind him with an Aphrodite heal, easy peasy. That's going to be nice and smooth. And I think the biggest thing is, like you said, Fishies don't have a bad draft, but what they do have is a very high execution draft. To make this work, there's a lot of skill shots involved, and at this level, you're going to be finding those, but we've been talking about it earlier, like a lot of mid abilities that were being missed, like anything that is off the mark, all of a sudden their team fight starts to crumble underneath them. Average Joes have, I think, a slightly easier time getting their damage confirmed, and that might make a big difference.
Well, looks like Leon really is taking Kakulin to mid. We'll have to wait because there's trouble for Dingodile already. Narrowly escapes being sent to the Shadow Realm. Instead, stays on the mortal plane. Still seems to be okay. But yeah, Leon has Kakulin here in the middle lanes, and that's where he's playing him. Stuck inside the slow, barely gets out now. Some aggression from Ishtao, can't find it there. And yeah, it's Uzi taking this Aphrodite over to solo.
And I actually like that here. Chronic's gonna just do Cthulhu things. You put Kakulin over here, it's almost maybe, I don't want to say a waste, but this is gonna get Aphrodite leveled up faster, experience faster, gold faster, everything just better all around. And you're gonna have a Kakulin in the mid fight alongside an Ao Kwong. Like, that's actually incredibly dangerous early on. Early rotation to the dual lane with a Kakulin, that knock-up can be absolutely devastating if he catches an on-her right after his jump or anything like that. So I really like this. And me and you were talking about it earlier where we were saying we love like lane swaps. I guess in this case it's not a lane swap, it's more like a role-esque swap. But either way, it's really solid.
Yeah, I think I like it. In comes Renjaru to save his solo support, but now I'm really worried about him. He doesn't have a leap. So yes, in comes the dash. Renjaru, my man. I don't think you can ever say, get down, Mr. President, to the Vice President. You're the most important one in that lane, so you got to make sure you live above all.
Yeah, when you jump in, you have to be so positive of everything that you are doing. Like, it has to be the most sure choice you've made in your life, or else you will find yourself in that position, right? You jump in, things seem okay for a little bit, and then it all falls apart. But this is an interesting rotation over here. Ao Kwong, Afro, good healing, but I don't know if the damage is there yet.
Not sure, so instead they're moving back towards their own tower for some cover, but they need this blue buff. You don't want Aphrodite and solo with that stripped away, but that is the case. Great work by recognizing this mage solo. This is the old school reason why you don't see him here. They get their buffs invaded as they continue to trade. In moves Ishtao and finds the damage thanks to back off, and now Chronic with no ultimate is stuck between the three of them. All he can do is fight his way out, and the Mire might have been enough. Lovebirds over the wall doesn't quite connect, and Chronic with a blink first relic is able to make it out, but Leon, maybe he can hunt down Chronic, who doesn't seem as suspected. There's the blink, and yes, Leon gets the third kill for Average Joe's.
That's the first thing I thought of when I saw him, was to look down at that blink, and this might be a great opportunity for Griff. No mana, though. That's so unfortunate to turn this around. No one has anything other than on her to work with here. Doesn't seem like Renjaru feels confident. I wouldn't either. You're half health. You're not trying to fight here, but you are down a little bit. You're able to get that one kill on Ymir over there. Good for the duo lane. Bad everywhere else. Leon getting a lead we were talking about last game, not really that great. Now he's on Kakulin. I think it's just going to lead to him being more of a bully in these early team fights.
Yeah, and that kill he just got into Nehu, I think I heard Nehu trying to ult. Maybe that was him trying to go into the stealth. Either way, lucky that he still has it. And Leon is just becoming a menace. Oh, and Renjaru is as dead as I've ever seen. Nowhere for him to go. Maybe he finds a return kill. The answer to that, I'm afraid, is no. And this is all borrowed time. And eventually, Ishtao came to collect, and that sends Ranjaru back to base. So this is scary already for Fishies. I mean, it's over 1,000, like a 1,600 gold lead, and they have a warrior ahead in the mid who's looking to absolutely bully. I mean, how many reps do you think Nehu has against a warrior mid? Probably not a ton. Nowhere near as many as he'd have against a traditional mage like Aphrodite. This switcheroo from Average Joe's really has Fishies thrown for a loop.
Yeah, it's difficult to deal with, too. I mean, what do? Do you send Chronic now over into the mid lane to try and have a typical, matchup against the Cucullin? Even though that then means that you have lost, having Morrigan right here in the mid where she's able to rotate, get a red buff a little bit more often. Like, Nehu's in an awkward position, not just in-game where he has to now ult to try and get away, and a beautiful wall to lock this down. No return damage. That's a good ult to burn.
Yeah, getting that away from Nehu's huge, but Nehu had to use it there. I think he dies every time. He doesn't. At least uses that on her transformation to clear the wave safely, so... I mean, like you said, it's forced pretty easily from Average Joe's for free, but forced it is indeed. Nehu had to do it, or he was RIP and sleeping with the Fishies. So instead... Oh, well, I didn't do that on purpose, sleeping with the Fishies. I like that. I'm going to use that later on in here, on purpose. I can't wait.
Average Joe's getting the cement blocks ready for him. They're the ones sleeping with the Fishies, not the Fishies, or not Average Joe's themselves. So very unfortunate as time's going forward. I mean, it's down 1 to 5. This is not like you're.
See if we can get Gore back in here. Meanwhile, there's action in duo. Dingodile is the early target. He's already had one spill, perhaps a second on its way as he falls to Ranjaru. Now, Leon's come in a little bit too soon, does get the range transformation, but they're gifting back kills. In comes Griff all alone. Why are they conveyor belting to their demise at the very least? He does find one kill there onto Ranjaru, but that is exactly what the doctor ordered there for Fishies. They find some critical kills. Now, it's time for Ishtao as he does what he can to find some more kills over on this left side, but there just isn't anything there. An excellent job by Fishies to punish Average Joe's, getting a bit over aggressive there on that left hand and finding some return kills that were much needed. But if you're Average Joe's at this point, you don't want this pace to slow down. You got to find some ways to keep the aggression going the way you have been all game without throwing away what they just did over there in duo lane. Maybe back over in solo, but wherever it is that this team needs to go, they have to find some pressure and keep this going so they can get this Aphrodite, this Ao Kuang online as soon as possible. Fishies, though, can go just about wherever they'd like to try and get back into this game. Nehu has a wide range of transformations he can turn into to find some options. A lot of options open to them, especially with Kirmi doing some damage. But as I thought, Average Joe's are back in solo, looking for a little bit more aggression if there's anything they can do to try and take care of Chronic over on the right-hand side of the map. Looks like not. Instead, they'll have Ishtao rotating back to mid, and maybe Average Joe's are slowing the pace down a bit, putting on the brakes, and instead looking to see if they can slow things down a little bit. Now, I'm being told I have Caleb Mifflin Sullivan here with me. No chance that's true now, is it? Are you really here, bud?
God bless. I thought I would never get a chance to cast again, Finch, but with you, bud, I think I could go in for a second round almost immediately. Looks like this game's been pretty active. 10 kills in 8 minutes. You have had a pretty good time with it.
Yeah, it's been a ton of action, man. Leon playing Cucullin mid, Uzi taking Aphrodite solo, and it's kind of slowed Fishies up here in the early game, but Fishies rebounded with a great fight over near Purple Buff where they got a 3-for-1 trade, and Dingodile has been the victim in most of these engagements. Looks like maybe again as he's plucked back in by Oceans. But Dingodile walks out safely, no one hard commits, and Average Joe still holding on to about 1,000 gold lead here 8 minutes in. But Leon transforming, wants to get more aggressive, looking to see if Oceans can be that target. There's the Lovebirds for that last bit of damage. Leon does indeed find that kill in mid.
Chronic with a slow rotation goes into Descent into Madness, sets up a kill for Kirmi. Leon may have picked up a kill, but pays the iron price. Uzi and Dingodile on the retreat. That should spell the end of this engagement. No chance. These guys are diving towers 9 minutes in. That's a slow rotation from the Apollo.
But he dies the second he lands. Nehu has the damage, and Griff absolutely regretting all his life choices up to this point. Good wall from Dingodile keeps him alive for a moment, but it's time for Ranjaru to get involved. A little bit of extra damage there from Chronic, and somehow Dingodile still drawing life. So in the end, they do bring in Griff just to trade him away, and ends up being a 2-for-1, and Fishies are right back in it.
These dudes really just took turns running it down, right? I mean, the fight starts on the Order side, Tier 1 tower, and then it ends on the Chaos side, Tier 1, and then it rejoins itself on the other side.
Well, Mifflin, appreciate you, man. You stepped in for a little while, helped Gore out, but Gore, I got the information that you're back with us, man. How you feeling?
Yeah, man. Good. I could literally not tell you anything that went wrong there. My internet didn't go down, so I have no earthly idea what that was. I think... And it's because it's sacrilege that I'm wasting my degree, but that's okay because I love doing this way more than I like programming, and they can eat it.
Well, happy to have you back. Thank you very much to Miff for stepping in, making sure I didn't have to solo cast for too long. I'm sure y'all didn't like hearing it out there in Twitch
Dude,
chat
look,
land,
I could
so now
live
we're
for
back.
a Finch solo cast. Listen to your voice all day. That's an easy choice.
Appreciate you, man. I like having the confidence. As it is Average Joe's rotating over to the left. They're bringing in 3. Looks like Greater Scorpion is the call for them. We've seen it going down about this timing basically all weekend long. So this appears to be about when you want to come grab it. Average Joe's get that one for free and head right back towards farming. In fact, they're bringing Dingodile in a bit low. Nope, no rotations, just kind of hanging out in the jungle. Nope, now there is rotations, and this could be trouble for Rinjaru. I don't think he knows just how many are waiting in the wings to catch him out, but they leave. Perhaps Rinjaru leaves a cushioned life where he never knew his life was threatened.
I spent like 2 minutes, all of a sudden jump back up. It was 1-5 a few minutes ago. What happened? I hear me coming through. Like, this is where I think the trouble has been earlier, but because the lead they had, I would argue Average Joe's was in this awkward position of kind of, an early game lead that seems to have become some murky in the middle. We think this Fishies roster and lineup is going to get stronger. Right now, Leon, I mean, he's already half health, and it was just a little bit of damage. That's not something you can really accept at the beginning of a fight.
He's got the Rage transformation, but can't keep up the aggression. Rinjaru is there in mid to keep Leon at bay, so that pushes him back. Now, Gore, I know that Average Joe's had a big lead, and they kind of gave that big lead up. Things are now tied, but we kind of started this game saying that Average Joe's have the advantage late. And now they have the advantage in the mid as well. Ishtao finds Ocean in the mid for the execute and gets Average Joe's back on top.
Gonna get a little...
Ishtao narrowly escaping there in mid, makes his way back out, but I think he's happy with the trade as he was able to find one pick. We'll be able to see if we can work on getting you back in here, Gore. Having a hard time hearing you for now, but no problem. I'll keep on rocking and rolling. No, I'm being informed. I got Mifflin back here with me. Miff, sorry about all this shuffling. Hope you're not feeling too much like a deck of cards. Listen, I knew that joke sucked early on, but I was stuck in it, so unfortunate, huh, that I had to follow through with it anyway. Miff, happy to have you by my side, literally anytime, ride or die.
Look, all I flash back to, like, episode 1 of Rick and Morty, like, Morty's thinking about Jessica, he's shuffling them around. Whatever, dude! Andy's not listening right now. We gotta focus up on what's happening on the screen. Finch, they're talking about a 1,000 gold lead in favor of the Chaos team, Average Joe's, with this late-game-centric draft. Absolutely wild that they've been able to find any form of contention throughout these first 12 minutes.
Well, Myth, I mean, I was just trying to have this conversation with Gore before, the actions picked up, but we were seeing that Average Joe's had a hard favorite. Like, they were very much favored in the late game, and then they started having the lead in the early to mid. Just because things are back to kind of even now doesn't change the harsh reality that you're going to have a hard time dealing with Aphrodite Ao Kwong in the late.
Aphrodite, Ao Kwong, Ymir, Apollo. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to get too much easier, but let's not pretend that the Fishies don't have some pretty strong late-game pieces themselves. Sure, maybe a little bit outclassed, but execution can make up for the difference. Double Cthulhu is obviously going to be a huge deal once we get to that 5-on-5 engagement phase, or even the double piercing Moonlight from Tsukiyomi, I think could come into play here. But Average Joe's have got things on the menu. Oceans is looking like a snack right now as he goes down expeditiously.
Yeah, Oceans came in at market price for Average Joe's, didn't he? Took care of him easily when they found him in the middle of the jungle. you gotta catch up, my man. If we're gonna keep this one going, it's the Fury going down here for Average Joe's as they continue to extend their lead. And both these supports having a tough time in the early, easily picked off by either one of these comps.
Yeah, both teams really working around this duo side pressure. 1-3 stands Oceans, 0-2 Dingo Dial. But as the game goes on, these guys are going to become much, much harder to kill. In the early, sure, Ao Kwang's got a very easy execute target inside of Sobek, but eventually Ishtao is going to have to shift his focus elsewhere. The same can be said of the Fishies when they're talking about Dingo Dial or something along those lines. But for now, it should all be about playing around the duo lane if you're an Order side fan. Renjaru is likely the strongest member on his team right now.
Man, were you here earlier when I said sleeping with the Fishies?
I wasn't, and I'm glad I wasn't.
Died. What do you
Yeah,
mean?
that was bad.
That's great! If someone of the falls and they're sleeping with the Fishies, the team name is a saying, it all works. I don't understand where the flaw is, bro. Is it the funny
it's
part?
like you
not
read
very
about
funny.
a joke in a book, and you're like, functionally, this is really good. Like, people should laugh. But they didn't.
No one
sorry,
is.
but
Yeah, and you know what? The thing is, I've never let that slow me down once. I'm a volume shooter when it comes to jokes, and it looks like Average Joes are volume shooters as well. They've had tons of attempts at getting an early lead at this game. Nice segue right back into really casting that I just pulled off. But it's a lull in the game is what it is. We've got time, to have some fun. They're just kind of vibing right now.
yeah, back in the day, you used to tell me, hey, we can go out to a macro view, talk about builds or what these guys are going to do once the team fight phase starts up. But now we're talking about sleeping with the Fishies. I feel like I'm really starting to get my tenure going as a Spike caster if you want to go deep in the dredges like that with me.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. How did I end up so deep in it already? That is the Greater Scorpion taken down on the right side. So Fire Giant spawning, not going to be a big deal, I wouldn't think, for a few more minutes. Probably not until we're to the 20-minute mark with these teams so close. But it is now available for him with that Greater Scorpion going down. So things are still pretty even for Fishies, and as you said, just because some of these late-game pieces for Joes are there, doesn't mean this is out of reach for Fishies at all. They certainly can still make their way back into it, especially with these Morrigan transformations. I think Nehu can have a lot of pressure on him to find valuable, impactful ultimate transformations from this point onward.
Yeah, agreed. And Renjaro makes an adjustment inside of his build, not the standard Executioner, Kin Size, Odysseus Bow, or something along those lines that we've been seeing. Instead, this Onher's picked up some crit. He's going to be able to leverage the additional penetration he gets from his passive as well, which means that once we get to these late game fights, if Ishtao really wants to take 1v1s, Renjaru on a 50% chance might just win the fight instantly. It's going to make it that much harder for Ao Kwang to target select once we do get to these 5-on-5s.
Yeah, I'm with you. Despite this cage, there is still very much rage for Renjaru, because he's got that one picked up. Can't wait to see the rest of his crit. I appreciate you just having my back now and lying. I need that. Check out this build, though, from Leon. I was really interested what his build path was going to be. It's boots on Kile, Shifter Shield, Wingblade. He's gone real, just straight-up bruiser with it, as if he were any other mid laner. It looks like despite where they are in their lanes, they're not really adjusting the build paths all that much. He wants to be as if he were a solo lane to Cullen.
Yeah, if that Shifter Shield came before the Anchile, he really would have been just a normal solo in there. But I guess instead, since he's up against Nehu, he wants to get that Anchile online as soon as possible. Average Joes strip away the Pyromancer with very low contention. Ishtao absolutely shredding objectives at this point. I mean, if Fishies just aren't going to show up to objectives on the right-hand side, I think Average Joes could just do fire.
That's a good point. They don't seem to have much information on that side. They have one sentry ward, like right in that path from mid to the jungle. And other than that, it is an enigma. It's a mystery what's happening on the right side of the map for Fishies. So if Average Joes can ascertain that there's that little data for Fishies, I'd certainly like to see them start things up on the right side and just dare Fishies to come in, find some good setup with this Kukulkan, with this Amir, and see if they can make it work. But doesn't look like they're in any rush to pull the trigger, and I kind of get it, right? Let your Ao Kwang farm. Let Uzi get even further ahead. I don't have any complaints with this pace for Average Joes.
It is an incredibly squishy build coming through from Uzi here. I've known when he streams, he plays this Aphrodite solo a lot. Usually he goes slightly tankier than this, but it seems like he's feeling pretty confident in the rest of his team. He knows it's not his job to really be a frontliner here, especially because Leon has taken this Kukulkan into mid. But I'm concerned about Average Joe's ability to finish off kills in the late game when Ao Kwang is no longer an option. They don't have a standard mage. They don't really have great AoE damage either. It's going to be very single target aggression from Average Joes, whereas Fishies are kind of the opposite. If they go for double Cthulhu, that's a ton of AoE, CC, and damage, or even just the 1v1 potential that the Morrigan brings could be crazy.
Well, levels. Dingodile plucked back into trouble. They even have a pillar there for him, and no backup is nearby, so Dingodile is the first casualty of war. A great pluck and stun from Nehu sets all of that up, and Average Joe's just on the retreat. You know, they had all the information about the Fury, and they still end up coming in late. Uzi pursues the Undying Love just to retreat as Chronic keys up the aggression. This is what Fishies comp can still do as Chronic puts Uzi down. It's 2-0 in favor of Fishies. They don't even care about the Fury. They took the fight. Looks like now they're heading back for the objective.
And that should close up the rest of the gold gap, and that's what we're concerned about. Even in that last fight, as a microcosm, we can evaluate that Average Joe's, once they're on the back foot in these engagements, doesn't have any great way to disengage. They don't have any great way to dissuade the majority of Fishies from moving forward because of how single target their composition really is. Ishtal was unavailable to shred people, so immediately Average Joe's kind of fall apart. They have to remain grouped up as 5 and try and leverage the fact that Leon and Dingodile can separate these team fights to create the space for Ishtal. If Fishies keep playing proactively and starting the fight off on the right foot, I'm not sure how the Average Joe's are going to be able to really swing it back.
Yeah, when Fishies are saying, we dare you to come into us, it makes life a lot harder for Average Joe's. Instead of Average Joe's finding these picks that they love and kind of starting the fights off with a 5v4, just not here for them in that last fight. They still have a bit of a lead, not even quite 1,000 though, so not a whole lot to really write home about. This is basically an even game here. Looks like we got a pause. We'll get you back into the action here as soon as we can. Now, Mifflin, I'm going to line myself up here. Happy to have you joining me here on this game. As we were kind of saying, as long as Fish is the one starting the fight off, you like their chances. But once this Ao Kuang is kind of 5-slotted, is that going to work? I feel like his pick potential is still going to be real high.
It is going to be incredibly high, and he's also going to have some pretty easy targets to look at, right? Cthulhu goes up in a Descent into Madness. I'm going to hit that guy. He's real big. He's not moving too quick, and he should be able to shred him out pretty quickly. But I'm still so worried about that lack of AoE. It's one of my pet peeves, if you would, with team compositions is, what are you doing once you're on the back foot? You can't only plan for when you're succeeding, and I'm not sure that the Average Joe's really did plan for ever falling behind.
It didn't even seem like their disengage was that great, right? They were basically just running away from the Fishies on the back of that engage, and once Cthulhu's up in that Descent to Madness, just not a whole lot you can do. You can see the charts kind of showing how even it is now. Experience favoring Fishies, a small amount of gold favoring Joe's. So we're basically at a break point here where things are very, very even. And I think a big fight around fire, or even just a skirmish where someone gets caught in the jungle, that could start to dictate the pace. Once one of these teams see an advantage, I don't see either one slowing down.
Yeah, both teams rapidly approaching level 20. I think really it is going to be the Fire Giant, the next POI on the map. I'd like to see Average Joe's try and establish vision dominance. They're really going to need it if they want to find these picks that they need to make this draft work. But even then, we're starting to approach the point where Nehu might have the best pick potential on this Morgan if he does elect to go for even a Polynomicon after he finishes up his run as a Hootie. It's going to be a pretty tough situation, right? Dingodile in particular being so immobile and not even that tanky, just the Gauntlet of Thieves really to get that true defense online. Could be looking to sleep with the Fishies.
Good work there, bro. I absolutely love it. But, I mean, you're right. That's what Nehu did. He snuck up on Dingodile, found the stun, and that's what led to the Ocean's Pluck and him being in the wrong part of town. Now, with so much more damage at Nehu's disposal, he's doing a lot more up front as Fishies start up the Fire Giant. And look where Griff is. He'd have to ult in to get to this fight. So now it's a question of can Average Joe's keep them at bay. There's the Pluck Dingodile brought in, but he's still okay. And the Fire Giant still very, very healthy, but it's double Cthulhu time. And Griff is on the way, riding the chariot, taking his Uber X to get to the fight on time. Kirimi has already gotten rid of Leon, and Renjaru has already fallen as well. But can they get their last member who's healthy underneath the Tier 2 tower back out? They can, and now the fight should be favoring Average Joe so they can re-engage. But Kirimi gets himself a double, puts down Griff, who keeps flying on his chariot just to die. They need him to find a safer way into this battle.
Yeah, land not in the middle of everyone next time, you know, land and then shoot your auto attacks instead. But there is a silver lining there. Ishtal on the side of Average Joe's was able to find the 1v1 up against Renjaru in the back. But we saw what happens once one person is isolated. If Ishtal has to go away and find that 1v1, in the 4v4, Fishies are favored every single time. It's that AoE damage coming into play yet again. What is like a Cullen and an Aphrodite and a Ymir going to do to stop the aggression? Maybe drop a wall and try and run away. This time, though, Average Joe's do maintain the defensive positioning and are able to confirm the Pyromancer for themselves. But that team fight could be indicative of a larger issue.
Yeah, this is scary for Average Joe's now. They're going to struggle to deal with this double Cthulhu composition in those big team fights, especially if they can't get Griff lined up, because I think that he and Ishtau are their best way to deal with these
Agreed.
Cthulhus. We found out last year that it's that sustained basic attack damage when Cthulhu is giant and you can't miss that chews through him. If Griff can't get there and line up with Ishtau, then they really are going to get walked over every single time.
But Griff does just now pick up the Odysseus' bow, so if he does find the opportunity to swing some autos into these large targets, that will make up for some of the lacking AoE damage that the Average Joes have through this draft. It should help a little bit, but even then, it's still going to be an incredible struggle on these disengages. We're seeing how it is really panning out in the actual team fight itself. But keep your eyes on Ishtau. If he's able to rejoin the team sooner, it could turn these fights around.
Zingadai with a two-man freeze. That was more for the disengage than anything else. Keeps Fishies at bay. Lets his team look for a bit of a reset. Now, right now, Average Joes have all the sentries and wards down they could want, but they've given up the Fire Giant positioning, so now it's Fishy's turn to start reclaiming some of that vision. They've got one sentry here on Renjaru, and he's backing. Meanwhile, Griff is continuing up this split push. He is putting pressure on the left side of the map constantly, trying to make it hard for Fishies to all-in engage at FG.
Yeah, I like this play from Griff. He's also going to be able to at least drag away some of the attention. He immediately spots out Renjaru, but instead goes back to base, doesn't actually keep up the pressure, maybe worried that there was a rotation there. Average Joes didn't have vision on the majority of the Fishies, so I guess I can agree with the safer defensive play, but I want Griff to continually put pressure on this duo side, continually look to siege this Phoenix, force someone to rotate over, and then create a situation in which you have a 5 versus 4 on the Fire Giant. With Gold Fury spawning, though, that could shake up how we approach these Fire Giant dances. One team might allocate one of their resources over there to try and strip away something while they're dancing around the FG.
Still trying to find some ways to get a little further ahead. The lead has gone back a bit more in Average Joe's favor now. I don't know how they've been finding some ways to farm and defend this fire, but it's been working for them as they have brought it down a little bit more to that 2,500 mark. Still nothing crazy, but just goes to show they're still finding ways by taking down these towers or finding some farm where they can to extend their lead a bit more.
It seems like both teams are playing very hesitant here. Average Joe's not showing face around the Fire Giant itself, instead trying to see if they can catch anyone isolated, trying to make use of that single target damage. If Dingo Dial is able to separate Oceans or Chronic with a wall, anyone who's not quite able to jump over it, that could be one way in. They've got so much damage that really that should just do it.
Renjaru's beads are down, though. That's huge. If Average Joe's can reset, but it looks like Chronic won't give him that shot. He's up in the ult, and Griff once again is the first one to fall. Unacceptable for Average Joe's. The double Cthulhu is overwhelming. Leon is starting to fall. Dingo Dial as well as the damage continues. There it is. Dingo Dial falling to Kirby, who gets the double. He's unstoppable with 7 in a row, and Leon adds on to it. It's a triple kill as Kirby continues to be an unyielding force and forces Average Joe's to retreat.
Man, Griff is absolutely getting mowed down in these engagements. He's not able to make his way into the air, and when he does get in the air, he's dunking down into his death. It's just a tough situation. And his teams, you said it right, it is unacceptable. They need the damage from this Apollo to contend with these Cthulhus, especially with these kin size and those items that make it that much easier to deal with the mitigations you get from Descent into Madness. It really is necessary for Griff to get to these fights on the right foot, but it's just Average Joe's kind of leaving him alone in the back line as well. We saw there the fight was started by Dingo Dial going for the wall, and then immediately Leon jumps over it to chase the opposition, and Ishtau and Uzi try and follow up, whereas Griff is just left alone in the back. Someone needs to peel for him, but even then, the positioning needs to be better.
Yeah, I mean, I think they really liked that first stun they found onto Renjaru from Uzi, and they just overcommitted on it. It's a great move to kind of force the relics and make him easier, but that hard commit did leave Griff in an awful position kind of alone, and now Fishies are in a great position here, Myth, to extend the life of this set. Right now, it's tied up just about in gold. Chronic's been caught out. In comes Griff, and this could be huge if they can find some picks. Chronic is the first one to go down. What a critical mistake that they've made here if they lose any more lives. But if they can keep it just at 1, then Fishies can still hold on.
Fire Giants still on 4 members, but Average Joe's have all the advantage here. They can start to work their way forward, but the defense is still going to be able to show some presence, at least around this Tier 2 tower. But for now, it's going to be 40 seconds left on Chronic. And what are Average Joe's going to do with this opportunity? Continue pushing, going into the Tier 2. No defense from the Fishies. That's interesting. I was expecting at least a soft defense to buy some time.
Right, at least do something to get Chronic a little bit of extra time to respawn, but not the call. Looks like they trusted that Average Joes weren't going to do anything loco here, right? They weren't going to hard commit and come in too far. So instead, they give up that tier 2 safely and start to fall back. I mean, wouldn't mind if Joes came back for the tier 1 and right. I mean, wasn't there a bit more they could do in that spot, or do you like Average Joes just taking the tier 2 for free and backing out?
I think it's the hesitation of, all right, we don't want to take a fight up against these guys, even though they are down 1. They still have Fire Giant. A lot of their ultimates are still available as well. So I can understand going for the safer play, especially considering with Fire Giant on the Fishies, if Average Joes take a misstep or a blunder around any of these engagements, they could very easily lose out on a Phoenix immediately. So I understand why they back up, and I think I do agree with the decision.
Okay, well, Ishtal taking the back. He was near Pyromancer. Meanwhile, Griff is pushing up right, looking for more split pushing. And this tier 2 tower in left falls. That's all according to plan for Joes. Probably not defending tier 2s against a 30-minute Fire Giant wearing team. So they'll just fall back to Phoenixes and let Griff do what he can and right to continue to open this map up. And I like it. Keep on pushing. All 5 members are here in mid, and at this point, Average Joe should be able to tell him that. Griff has to be quick if he wants to get back in time to help on this Phoenix, because Fishies are pushing in. Chronic is already inside the range. Oceans goes to the back. Big
nice
stuns.
freeze.
Does lockdown 3, but it's Nehu's turn inside the Cthulhu ult.
And immediately we're starting to surge our way forward. Leon blinks in, finds the ultimate himself, linked up with Uzi, but the damage isn't quite there. Whoa. Chronic burning fast, but Red Jaru finds Ishtal.
Yeah, Ishtown took way too much damage. Now it's Kirmi's turn to make his way to the back line. He gets stunned as soon as he arrives, but still looks healthy. He's not getting any damage on him, but finally Griff finds it, and Kirmi gets shut down, but all is well. Fishies get the mid-Phoenix they wanted, so even though it ends up being 1-for-1, I mean, I doubt they're feeling all that bad about it.
That's a very good trade. Keep your eyes on Apollo, though. Griff, we've been here before, bud. You got to choose your fights well. I think it's just an intimidation factor. No way he dunks into this.
He'll land on Rajaru way safely in the back, but can't really afford to commit any more than that. Exactly to your point. Fishies now hold a very, very slight gold lead as Griff comes over to grab the Pyromancer. Mid-Phoenix down, though, is a huge advantage for Fishies. They'll have those Fireman waves pouring in that Average Joes have to keep dealing with.
But Fire Giant buff is going to be spawning in about 1 minute now. The Pyromancer going the way of the Average Joes should make it a little bit easier for them to get in towards this Fire Giant if they have to go back to base first. But as you said, that Fire Mini Wave leaking its way down mid is going to create some pressure on the map. Now the Fishies can slow down their play a little bit, allow these minions to win neutrally, and then use that opportunity to push in towards the neutral objective itself. Keep your eyes on Ishtal. Again, we need him pop it off, and we need Griff if you're a Chaos fan, because as of yet, I haven't seen enough from Griff, and Ishtal losing that fight up against Renjaru is incredibly tough, but that's exactly what Renjaru itemized towards with that crit build.
Yeah, plus Ishtal's not going to get a true 1v1, to your point about the AoE. Every time he steps up to try and trade, he's also getting chronicked and Nehud by two double Cthulhu combo, right? So it's just making life really hard on Ishtal. What they really need, and I don't see how they can do it, is to find a way to force those Cthulhu ults out, but Fishies have been so patient, and when they do use them, they all-in commit.
Yeah, there's no way for Average Joes really to disengage either. We've already talked about it, but their disengage potential isn't that great. Already hard enough to deal with this Cthulhu. Fantastic wall from Dingo. I didn't even know you could interact like that.
Me neither!
Is that okay? That's weird.
Nuts! I didn't know, dude. Dingo Dial, if you did that on purpose, bro, you're absolutely cracked. Can I say it, my man? You're nuts. Because that's hard to accomplish. Well, they're on the Fire Giant now, though, and Average Joes are waiting right outside. There's the pluck again from Oceans Leon he goes for, but there's not that much pressure. Looks like they've given up on the fire. 4 members are off of it. Instead, they're looking for the battle, because in the back, Ishtal is losing to Kirmi. What a play from him to go find Ishtal all alone and absolutely run it. Now it's double Cthulhu with nothing to worry about, charging down Main Street onto Average Joes and daring them to find an answer when an answer is non-existent.
I think this might be it. Leon attached to Aphrodite getting the benefit of some of that healing, but you know who they left behind? It's Dingo Dial. Average separated himself with that wall, blinking away as well. Might be able to disengage here, but that is still a clean win for the Fishies. Actually, Average Joe's going back in.
Yeah, but this was not the alone target they thought they found. Renjaru had the backup. In comes Griff. But again, he falls right into trouble. Maybe take Apollo away from my man because he is asleep at the wheel. He comes right into trouble and falls. Dingo Dial as well. And now just 2 to defend against 5. And Myth, I just don't see him getting it done. Looks like Fishies might be able to even this one up.
They might be able to. Leon and Uzi are going to tie up those
Goodness.
capes. All right, I meant to say Uzi. Uzi needs to put that cape on if he wants to keep this game alive.
Yeah, but before you've even handed it back to me, the fight is over. The Titan is done, and the Fishies have pushed us into a Game 3. Myth, I think we were right to highlight the Aphrodite and Al Kwang and what they can do in the late, but they did not have a way to deal with this double Cthulhu composition that just ran right over them.
The double Cthulhu really was it, but I think that even then it could have worked had Griff just had a little bit of an easier time finding his damage making its way home, or if Ishtao doesn't fall in the 1v1 up against Kirimi, or even if Leon decides to just straight up play a mage, get some AoE going so they can't just walk at you for free.
Yeah, I think Kirimi deserves quite a bit of that credit. My man popped all the way off in this game, and he gives us some bonus smite. Game 3 of our final set going to be coming to you after the break.
Two games down, 1 to go. The Fishies call their way back into this game number 3. Mifflin, I know that you haven't been casting or anything, so welcome back to the desk. It's really great to see you back. You know, you've had a nice long rest for your voice. I see.
Yeah, you know, I think at least I got to be a little bit closer to the action, so I can maybe do this death segment a little bit more justice, right? They definitely had my full attention the entire time.
Absolutely. So let's jump into it, shall we? What were some of your personal highlights for that game there, Mifflin?
Well, I gotta talk about that pretty sick Ymir wall that I don't think I'll ever see again, where he was able to get the wall off between the Sobek plucks somehow, and also somehow Kirmi winning 1v1s up against an Alquang consistently. I'm pretty happy that we got some Kirmi clips here, man. This is exactly what we need to see because this guy stepped up for his team in a big way.
This, I'm pretty sure we have confirmation that this highlight reel is basically just Kirmi. Like, my man was literally running this entire game. We talked about it game one, we said it pre-game one, we said it post-game one. Kirmi is the kind of jungler who can run a game, and this is absolute textbook example of that. This, it almost looks unfair how well Kirmi played this character here.
But he was afforded all that space because, again, I mean, not to quote the casters here, but I think Mifflin said average Joes were really lacking on AoE damage. So Kirmi, with the two Cthulhus running around in front of him, really didn't have to worry about any threat coming his way. It was a very well-executed draft by the Fishies, and I think we're going to see a huge change from average Joes.
For sure. It's the kind of strategy that we saw at Worlds as well. You know, this double insert thing here with the Morrigan. Double bats was one of PK's favorites, but double Cthulhu was definitely one of the biggest problems that we saw in that Worlds draft, and it looks even more devastating nowadays, apparently. Kirmi sitting with 26,000 player damage at the end of that game. Absolutely ridiculous. Terrifying. What
it really is.
Sorry, Mifflin, I cut you off there.
You know, I was just like giving you an affirmative, like it's called active listening, where it's kind of like saying yeah, but I said 3 words instead of 1.
Right, gotcha. Okay, cool. So Mifflin, what do you think average Joes need to change up here? Because honestly, they didn't play bad.
No, it wasn't the execution on the field. I think it really does come down to the composition of the draft. They really, I want to see them get back to what they're best at. Put El Leon on something he's comfortable in, like the Yanis or like Thoth or even just a standard mage. Have Uzi play something like his Nike or like his Odin, and just go back to what they are best at doing instead of these niche strategies we saw in Game 2.
Well, let's see what they're going to change. Like, we can stop our speculating about it. Let's not do our jobs and just let the players do it for us. I think, do we think they're going to run back P's and B's the same as last game, or?
I could see average Joes kind of maintaining their same bans. I don't think Fishies really need to change their bans up either. It really is just the picks that could be adjusted. But if anything, if I'm the average Joes, if I'm changing anything at all, probably ban the Tsukiyomi unless I'm picking it for myself.
Well, Joes for the first time in this series have that first pick advantage, so definitely a thing that they could do if they wanted. Although, I'm kind of sad, Mifflin, we're not going to be able to see any of Fishy's first pick Guardian shenanigans that I've so strongly loved to disapprove on. But Joes are going to choose to opt to ban out that Morrigan at the moment. Not so far worried about the Tsukiyomi, so I do think that they might be looking to pick it up for themselves. Fishies once again opting on the side of caution and not letting Elion touch that Yanis in any way, shape, or form. Guan Yu also getting taken off the table.
Yeah, I like these bans across the board. Fishy's already taking a one shot at Leon through this Yanis. The Guan Yu's a standard meta ban. And then Average Joe is switching it up with this Ymir ban. It's pretty good across the board, but what is it leaving available on the map? You still have gods like Set, not anymore. Just got banned out. Shouldn't ever talk about gods that are available until the bans are done. But what now is still available? You've got gods like Persephone. Apollo still makes his way through. You can go back to the Cucullin, who's had a lot of success in the past. On her, Sobek, all across the board. And Average Joes, they're going to keep it up. They kind of like what the Fishies have been doing with these Guardian first picks, so they're going to do it themselves.
Well, I guess I get to agreeably disapprove of their Guardian first picks now. Thank you, Joes. That's very considerate. But it doesn't stop Tsukiyomi from being an issue. They didn't choose to ban him away. He's still open. This is pretty spooky. Maybe Joe's thought that the problem wasn't so much the Tsukiyomi, but instead the double Cthulhu. So banning away the Morrigan will help them deal with that. Cthulhu will still be on the table, though, so they won't be completely free of handsome Squidward, as I like to call him. But Cupid will be locked in here for Fishies in that ADC role. Not a bad start. Meanwhile, Nemesis for Ishtown. This is one of this man's most comfortable picks. So I'm very excited to see what he's going to be able to do with this, especially against a Cthulhu who... Nemesis is one of Cthulhu's biggest counters in my mind.
Yeah, going to that Descent into Madness, you're feeling all great about yourself because you got additional defense and mitigations. You're a huge CC center. Oh wait, no, Retribution. All those defenses you got in excess now goes to Nemesis, as well as stripping it away from yourself. Going to make it that much easier to focus him down here. But Fishies going deep into their pocket picks, man. Akirmi's Erlang Shen, if this is going into the jungle, is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of highlighted it at the start of the desk segment, at the start of the set, right? If there's like a list of characters Kirmi can play, Erlang's in the top 3, right? Between Carly and Naja, I believe. Like there are so many characters this guy can play, but Erlang is right at the top of that. Luckily, though, they have an Athena on the enemy team, so a little bit of anti-auto attack for Joe's at the moment with those block stacks, with that taunt. So a little bit of respite there for them. Fishies deciding that they don't want to deal with these mages in the Raijin and Scylla variety. Meanwhile, Ares and Persephone getting banned out here for Joe's.
Yeah, I think that the average Joes have already got themselves a draft that I can imagine is going to fill out much more nicely than we saw in the last match. I mean, the engage factor is going to be there. Uzi likely going to be piloting that Athena in the soul lane, or could even flex it into the jungle if Ishtao so chooses, but likely going into the solo, which means that you're going to have a very tanky, high damage front line inside of Athena, especially with the recent buff to Confound now dealing damage, and you can have Sobek peeling out for the back line. If Cthulhu tries to dive in and be that engage factor for the Fishies, Nemesis' Retribution ultimate should be able to counter that one out nearly instantly, as well as the additional penetration that Honor has from his passive. If he elects to go for the kin size build, should be able to shred Cthulhu pretty easily himself as well. But I'll be very excited to see where we go with the mage in this slot. Leon hovering the Agni here, one of his old favorite picks. That's going to bring the AoE that we need. This average Joe's draft looking much better.
Absolutely, yeah. Agni, I think, is one of the most kind of exciting picks in the mid lane for me at the moment. He's so not necessarily undervalued, right? Because we do see a fair amount of Agni, or at least we have during the qualifying stages. People are aware of the power of this pick. It's just in so few situations it can be properly highlighted, brought to, that's the one, utilized. Thank you so much, Mifflin, for being my brain. Kukulkan is going to be the counter mage in the mid lane here. Fishies had a really good look on it at that first game of the set. And Kuzenbo looks like it could be hovered. Again, don't trust production. It could all be a bait. They could just be playing with my emotions. But Agni, I think, is one of those characters that's super, super interesting. And I did it again. I read them like a book. Kabrakan logged in finally here for the Fishies.
Yeah, I think the Fishies also have come away with a pretty strong draft here, Blazy. I mean, Erlang Shen as that frontline shred damage is going to help out a lot on these objectives as well. They've also got the best objective secure on the map with Spirit of the Nine Winds. Cthulhu, even though there is only one of them this time, is still going to be very good for that team fight disruption factor with the continuous knockups. The only thing that really stands out to me as a question mark is that they decided to go towards the Cupid when there were so many other hunters that have been prioritized very highly still available. Heimdall comes to mind. Apollo somehow makes it through the entirety of P's and B's without seeing a pick or a ban here. I think that this Cupid is going to be utilized largely for the healing. Maybe we see some elongated fights around these Gold Furies or around these Fire Giants, or maybe it's just to deal with some of these dashes like Sobek or Nemesis to lock them down with the Fields of Love. Either way, though, I think the Fishies draft is going to take a lot of execution on field. Keep your eyes on Kirmi in particular.
I mean, we could think about this in 4D, right? And think maybe they picked up the Cupid because that Mez from Fields of Love is a pretty decent setup for the Spirit of the Nine Winds. It could have all just been an elaborate way of giving Neyu an extra method of hitting his ultimate. I'm not sure that's what it is, but I think you're definitely more on the money with the healing and the anti-dash, but we'll have to see. I think Cupid is still a relatively solid pick. He's not one of my favorites personally, but he can do some pretty impressive stuff to this comp, and he has a fair amount of CC for a Hunter, which against the Nemesis, whose like whole thing is can kill you with the reflect damage unless you have CC, I think it's a pretty good option.
It is, and I think that we could highlighting the Nemesis is the right way to go, Blazer, because it's really about, throughout the early game for Average Joe's, making sure that this Nemesis is allowed to farm up. He's really the only one who's necessitating that farm, who really needs to get a couple items under his belt before he's effective in those fights. So keep your eyes on Ishtao and how he decides to play the early game in the jungle.
It's going to be all down to these junglers, I think, Mifflin, but let's not speculate any further and throw it to the casting team for the final game of the day.
Thank you on the desk there, Mifflin and Blazy. I've got Goremizer back with me as we move into the final game of the day. Without a doubt, it's been an excellent day here in the EU SCC, Gore, and excited we're going to get to end it on a high note here, because this is interesting, right? The Cthulhu is still back in Fishy's hand, but without the Morrigan, and this time with Ishtao piloting Nemesis, thought of as a great counter to that Cthulhu. We'll get to see Leon on this Agony as well. Can he make this pick work? Uzi back on solo. Athena, a lot to unpack here, Gore, so please go wherever you like.
I mean, a lot of what we saw in the last two games that has worked out, I think, is going to work out here. Nehu, very early on. This was Respect Band in Game 2 on the Aokwang. Out Kukulkan. I did it. I immediately did it. The first thing I did was get it wrong, of course. I put it in my brain earlier, and it had to happen. But I think Kirmi, that transition, maybe not Tsukuyomi as it was last game, but moving now into this game on an Erlang Shin, which I would actually argue, I would say in most scenarios, is one of the best, like, just versatile gods all around. Like, we get to see Erlang just perform better than most people on average. So this is going to look really good for that duo specifically. Ocean's is a little iffy, I think, in that mid 3v3. Like, when you start to factor in a Kabrakan, that's where things start to slip through, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be detrimental to him. So I'm excited to watch Fishy's mid 3v3, but like you had said, the retaliation on the other side and how they handle it is maybe just as interesting, if not more, because of the Agni.
Yeah, and I like a Kabrakan at least because of how the escapes for Average Joe's, right? They're all dash reliant except for Griff, so they should all have a tough time getting out of his walls if he's using them correctly. But I think you're just overall right. This is not a completely tested pick at this high level, and him being able to consistently day in and day out have that high performance like some of these other supports have. But as long as Oceans is timing that tectonic shift properly, then we should get to see exactly what they were thinking with this pick, so a lot of it will be down to how he uses that ultimate. But I expect this to be the climactic finish that we're expecting to this set. Average Joe's have done a great job of getting off to early leads in this set. This could be Fishy's chance with an aggressive Erlang Shin and Kabrakan to go to a good start, especially because that Blink Pluck didn't work. So here's the stun right into the Heart Bomb. But good Impale should create some space, but Dingodile is still low, and Oceans is still on the warpath, finds the two-man stun, so there's the dash. Dingodile dodging for his life and somehow still alive.
I mean, I'm having deja vu. Ranjaro dashed in just like he jumped in game number 1, or maybe that was game number 2. Either way, it's all blending together. But another missed pluck from Dingodile. Those are what's maybe cementing this fight for Fishies more than anything. If Dingodile is connecting on either of those, Average Joe's is getting a kill. But unlucky for them, they just weren't quite on the mark. A little wide there, not able to connect. But like you had highlighted, I think, in this matchup, Dingodile, the pluck's important, but these walls, these stuns important on the other side coming down from Oceans. We've seen the potency of the stuns, but yesterday was a great example. I was comparing Kabrakan specifically to be more Aurora-esque in style. That's where my mind goes when I see this god. And yet yesterday we got to see some of the best ults because the way the walls were placed, very similar to a Ymir wall just on a massive cooldown, was perfect for blocking people off, locking people in. It gave everyone this very easy one-on-one target, but most importantly, there was a Fire Giant that was confirmed because he used the wall to block it off. It's moments like that that really can separate the okay Kabrakans from the great Kabrakans, and I want to see if Oceans can hit that great mark that has been set out for him.
And I think that you kind of hit on the most important thing, Gore. I think Cabrakan is one of those gods where you kind of have to be great in order to be able to play it at a high level, right? I mean, there's some gods like, like Sobek comes to mind here, or some of these other gods that are constantly getting picked, like Athena, where you don't necessarily have to be flawless on them to get great winning value out of them. But Cabrakan, you got to be near flawless, I think, if you want to be able to beat some of these top teams here in the SCC. So we'll see if Oceans can live up to that top billing that's on him. Meanwhile, Nehu keeping to the similar build here. It's Book of Thoth, first item for this Kukulkan Khan, and we might get to see it put to use. There's the taunt, there's the ultimate, and Dingodile's in trouble. They put the Defender of Olympus on him to try and keep him alive, and it's enough. Dingodile still drawing breath, and now it's Oceans who's on life support. First blood of the game goes to Ishtao as he cuts Oceans down.
Man, look at it, like Uzi's health virtually gone, Dingodile virtually gone, Griff virtually gone right now, uses the ult there to stay alive. But ultimately, I was really excited to just see how they were going to fight, how they get away with that, right? I mean, you should not be that low health and be able to walk away alive, and I think it goes to show the adaptation, again, from game number 1 here to game number 3, specifically against Nehu in this ultimate, which is to say that that time it really didn't mean that much, whereas in game number 1 it was causing them massive amounts of trouble. And so the adaptation, again, perfectly making sure that they know how to handle this. They don't have to ban it away. They can take the kitty gloves off and just manhandle down that worm in middle. And so far, it's been looking good for him. Granted, it's only 1 kill, so it's not the end-all, be-all of it, but it's a little lead.
Yeah, but I think this is why we're seeing Athena be so popular, right? That Defender of Olympus is really what critically got Dingodile out of there, providing that mitigation on the tail end, and just kind of being bulky enough to shrug off that Kukulkan ultimate at the start of the game. As good as Book of Thoth is, and as much power as it provided, just wasn't quite enough to shut him out. And now here are our average Joes, yet again, getting off to a good start in the early game, as we've seen them do all set long so far here, Gore, but can they translate that into mid to late? Last game they struggled to do it, so maybe they can do it here.
It's hard to out-rotate an Athena who can literally decide to just be elsewhere on the map. And that's the thing, we've been talking about it. I think yesterday we hit it a lot, earlier today we got to hit it a lot, but global ults are big, and Uzi, I mean, he's in trouble, but it's hard to fear for him.
Well, it's a hard commit, though, from Chronic and Kirmi. They wanted Uzi down, and they did it. In comes Ocean's perfect wall. Meant there was nowhere for Ishtao to go. A double kill for Kirmi, who looks to start game 3 the same way he did in game 2.
They could not have worse for that to happen. Me talking easy, Uzi's going to be able to things and out-rotate things, and then well, Fishies just read it a little bit better. Now swinging 2 kills in their favor, and this is what I like. We were talking about this earlier, these greater Scorpions, because we were talking about how it's about 10 minutes, 12 minutes max, where you typically see that one in the Gold Fury pit go down. But this one over in Fire Giant, it's not more difficult to deal with, obviously. Like, you throw 3 people at it in 5 minutes, they just took it down. But it's something that people have been avoiding. They have been taking, again, handling it very carefully, not wanting to get too involved over there until they want a Pyromancer, they want a Fire Giant. But then there's that awkward delay where you have to wait for it to respawn, and it's this awkward moment. Just grab it early. Maybe the enhancements on your buffs aren't the end-all, be-all, but knowing that at 10 minutes there's a Pyromancer to fight, whereas on the other side, you're not even going to have a Gold Fury just yet, it gives you an option on the board to get a lead and further it.
Yeah, to have one more objective where you can look for pressure, or rather where your pressure in a lane can be used to secure that objective. If you're ahead in solo, or if you're ahead in the jungle, you can just go ahead and pull one or the other over and secure that objective once that pyro or something like that is up. So I like getting off to this aggressive start here for both teams. Fishies, though, turn that fight over in solo into a nice little lead for themselves, or at least getting the game pretty close to even at this point. If there is a gold disparity, it really is not enough to really talk about. Yeah, like 170. I mean, that's basically nothing. Same for that experience.
You could
so
sneeze and lose that gold.
Yeah, exactly. You could look away from your monitor for a moment, and that amount of gold is gone, right? So at this point, these two teams are still dead even 6:30 in. And we're already seeing what I thought was one of the biggest points of this game, which is how well Oceans can play on this Cabrakan. Well, that ult he dropped in front of Ishtao over in solo, showing what he can do.
Yeah, if we get that a little bit more, I think it's going to be easy to write this off as a solid Cabrakan. I'll admit, I'm sure there's some people who are watching there as well. At first, I was confused when I see a confound on the totem. I'm like, why? Of all things, why? Friendly reminder, it did get damage added onto that one. Not a whole ton, but still enough. When you're Athena, any damage is good damage. And so make sure that you realize that every time they get hit with that taunt, there's a little bit of damage coming with it. That's going to cause some trouble over here, especially if they get caught out by Uzi. But no, Uzi back. He's going to have to ult back in if they want to fight here.
Yeah, what is this? The Outsiders? Everyone's bringing their boys over for a scrap on the other side of town, and Oceans is the early target. Good stuns coming through. That's slowing down the damage, but you can't stop Dingodile when he's lurking in the waters. Oceans is the first casualty of war in this one, but that is not stopping Chronic from looking for more aggression. Ishtao goes down, and they are not slowing down as Kirmi gets underneath the tower, but the taunt pulls him back in. They lose Leon, and on the other side, Kirmi drops as well. A 2-for-2 jungle support for jungle mid.
Man, if this is Outsiders, I'm trying to figure out which person just pulled out the Switchblade. I don't know. It's really difficult to tell right now.
They cracked the Coke
Things just
bottle,
seem
right?
to go even. Maybe it's Kirmi. He loses his life, but still able to come through. That one took me back. I don't think I have thought of Outsiders since... Let's say 8th grade, maybe 7th grade? I don't know. It's definitely been over 10 years. It's definitely been over a decade.
And you know your boy played 2-bit, the guy out there talking with not a whole lot to say. That was me, bro. And we'll see if maybe they can keep that same theme going throughout this game, because they have been willing to fight in the early all day, all weekend here in the SCC, and you just love to see the exchange of blows. Things still relatively even, though. A little bit of a lead in solo and jungle for Fishies. A little bit of a lead in the support for Average Joes, but still nothing to really get worked up about. Even after that big battle, things are essentially in either team's camps. Here, only 9 minutes into the game. Why does it feel like we're further into the game than this? We're really not even to the 10-minute mark. This is the laning phase, the early game still.
Right, with this many rotations, I was getting wrapped up to it. I genuinely would have told you that I thought we were 10 minutes ahead in terms of gameplay. I mean, you got the Scorpion going down over there in the FG pit and rotations all the way to solo. Like, yeah, you've got to be 18-plus minutes into the game, right? There's no reason to be over here otherwise. But this just seems to be the home right now for a lot of people, this solo lane. I think you were talking about it a little bit earlier, but it seems a little easier to gank and seems like a good place to have a point of contention. Shut the solo laner down, slow the game down for the team who's losing or whoever solo laner is behind. Unfortunately, this has been the opposite over here. You know, your carries are getting away with slightly less ganks. Look, if you're Zapman, you're still getting 4-man ganks at 2 minutes. I'm sorry, it's just going to happen. But anybody else, you're getting a few less to deal with. But Griff is having a good job against Rinjaru here, and as long as he knows Kirmi's around, which I think Kirmi's standing right on a ward. No, that's their ward. So if he knows and recognizes this aggression, he's safe. But if this is left to a 1v1, I actually think Griff is the one coming out on top.
Yeah, I almost can't believe Griff didn't drop the ult off that Impale. Maybe he's really concerned with saving it for that Fields of Love. It's a great option for Onher to get out of it against these Cupids. His Dingodile does pluck Kirmi. It even uses the Lurking in the Waters, but I mean, it just has me scratching my head. Not a whole lot to do there. And in the end, Dingodile agrees, cancels the ult early, and just gets right on out of there. Didn't see much option. Maybe just deterring any CC used on him in exchange for him going for that pluck.
Chronic has been incredibly aggressive. Same thing could be said over here. There is exactly that ult you wanted to see for the counter, but it's not going to save you from everything.
Yo, no, not if Kirmi's here. Rinjaru and Kirmi find the kill onto Griff, who's just in trouble. Look at the jungle. They put 2 sentry wards down on that side of the map to make sure that Griff couldn't get it warded to see a gank coming.
I mean, block the vision out, make sure you can't win it. I mean, it's been a long time said, but wards win wars, and a lot of what you see here in Smite. And so if you are able to take down all of the vision just for a gank like that, it's a free kill. It only will happen once, I would argue. I don't think you're going to be able to do it that often. Rinjaru, any aggression he shows from this point forward is going to come with war flashbacks to that gank, and you know he's going to try and turn around, or Griff is going to turn around in those instances. But you have this much control. I mean, look at the ward vision from Fishies over there. I see 1 blue ward in Average Joe's, and that's just beside their red buff between that and the mid lane. So that means that should be a free Scorpion on the side of Fishies if they're able to get in there. If they get a couple of kills and get some zone, I mean, that's an easy call for them. There's on the other side, I mean, it's weird to talk about this. The Fury is not even available, but the Pyromancer, the Fire Giant already on the board. One could fight.
Yeah. You're
going to find something big in the objective on the right-hand side.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see it. Average Joe showing some heavy presence to solo now. They're just going to go for Pyromancer instead. Gore, this was exactly what you predicted. And great timing. There's 2 members of Fishies in base. Oceans is nearby but has no idea. Pyromancer going to be heading over to Average Joe's nice and early. Not game changer or anything like that, but just another little objective, another little bit of gold and farm and presence on the map that's going their way.
Man, this is such an interesting dynamic for the team because, I mean, look at it. The gold, like we've mentioned it earlier, negligible. I mean, it means nothing, right? Every little lead that is grabbed is almost taken away instantly from either side. And it goes back to that dynamic I think we were saying earlier where a game just feels even all around. Like, it's coming down to very specific styles of play. Can Oceans get a wall? Can Dingodile get a good pluck to set up a kill? How easily are you going to be able to, if you're Ishtao, dive into the back for Nehu? Or if you're Kirmi, dive into the back for Leon? Like, Leon's not easy to take down on Agni. He's not necessarily going to be putting out, the most damage either. He's definitely more CC heavy right now. And it just creates this really weird dynamic because no one wants to team fight yet either. You're not at that stage. You're only 13 minutes in. You're not supposed to be team fighting. And so it's a very dynamic laning phase is the way I would say. It's very fluid because we're seeing people just rotate for fights anyway like it's nothing. And even now, I mean, there's a 4-man grouping from Fishies over here on the left lane. They're not really doing much with it. There's a red buff that they can go grab, but that's about it, right? They're just making sure to roam as a group so that they can either find that single pick or try to find maybe a couple if they are lucky, and avoid getting picked themselves. But I'm surprised that it's come at this slower pace in the lanes, right? I mean, no big objectives really being fought over, save for that Pyromancer that was taken down. Like, there's not really a big swing just yet.
Kirmi would love to swing here, but as he ejected, used that Defender of Olympus in order to retreat. But he and Oceans are not done getting aggressive just yet. There's the stun, there is the taunt from the 9 turns blessing. So Oceans goes into the ultimate, or rather Dingodile does. That does allow him to escape. So despite the heavy commitment from Fishies, they don't get a kill. In comes Ishtown, dropping his ultimate, but he comes out worse for wear for. It looks like an ultimate was just used on him as Fields of Love catches out Dingodile, and Rajaru gets the kill. Now it's Oceans getting aggressive. Can't find the stun. Great taunt from Uzi. Lets them get the return kill onto Oceans, so it's support for support here in the middle lane.
Once again, Leon, Ishtao so low, and that's a good Cthulhu ult. I thought Chronic was going to get more aggressive, try to confirm those kills. He forces them to run back. They're going to get a tier 1 tower out of this, but maybe you could have gotten more. At that point, though, I mean, gold has been so contested in this and so back and forth. Anything that gets some gold in your pockets at this point to give you a small lead, granted, it's still only 200. It means nothing at this point, even with a tower going down. I think that's maybe a testament more to how well Average Joe's is farming. Fishies has been the one getting the bigger objectives and kind of the big targets. And it's just Average Joes are farming the map a little bit stronger and getting things because of it. Now, taking out some wards, taking out this Greater Scorpion, at least will spawn up a Fury and give them an option to potentially swing something heavy in their favor. 1 Gold Fury right now actually means a lot more than a typical Gold Fury at 15 minutes. You get it now, and that could be your chance at a lead. No one, despite the kills, despite what they've been able to accomplish up to this point, has really been able to pull far enough ahead to make a difference.
We'll see if Dingodile can set up this red buff invade. It's been a bit slow in this game for a little while now as they take away this red buff, even going for a pluck as well. So now stuck inside the tornado. Great ult from Oceans. Nearly locks Dingodile in. He gets the Defender of Olympus, keeps him alive, but the 9 turns blessing pulls Dingodile back in. Now they're all in danger of falling as Uzi forced to retreat. Same could be said for Ishtao, who used the beads to reposition. Fields of Love dropped on his head, and Ranjar with the fadeaway heart bomb puts an end to Ishtao, and now Average Joe is starting to make mistakes after mistakes. Giving up 3 lives to that red buff invade, not even worth it conceptually, as it's Griff who falls next, and maybe even Uzi who comes into the engagement to try and help. Their conveyor belting in. Leon will be the next one to arrive with Agni. Maybe can find some trades to make this a bit more worthwhile, but nothing is there.
Nehu even getting a little brave there. I mean, that tower is virtually dead. I think they potentially could have tried to knock it down, but I like this call a lot better. They still get the tower thanks to minions, and they stay alive in the process, plus a Gold Fury. This is the kind of swing you need in your favor. And honestly, Finch, there's so many things to highlight. Like you said, Average Joe's kind of awkwardly going in 1 by 1 for the fight. Like they just figured maybe trying to make it even for him. I don't know. Maybe there was some ego behind it. I have no idea what the mindset was behind that. But you really get to see some of the deadly combos that come down from Fishy's composition. Kirmi, that 9 turns blessing, that taunt that comes through, not only healing him, but locking people down makes it really easy for, say, a Spirit of the 9 wins or something big like that to just deal a lot of damage to 1 or 2 targets. And then we got to see something else Nehu does. And this is something that Kukulkan does more than pretty much any other mage, and he does it better than any other mage. It's the slow from the Squall, as well as this Tornado and the damage that it can do. The kind of area of denial that you get out of having that giant AoE out. It's just so massive, and there was nothing Average Joes could do about it. They were taking more damage than they intended to. I mean, Griff had to beads the slow from the 1 just to try and get out alive.
No, you're right. Pyromancer going to Fishies. They got the Fury a moment ago as well. And remember, this is why I'm so obsessed with these Greater Scorpions. It's my biggest point of focus here in Season 8 alongside the starter items. It was Griff who took down the Greater Scorpion, opened up the Fury, then they go just brute force and invade at red. I don't even think they got the buff, but even if they did, they lose 3 lives, and it's Fishies that get the Fury on the back. I think you just have to be so careful about when you're the one taking it down and you're not opening up a path for the other team, which is exactly what happened here. But even still, despite all that craziness, it's only about 3,000 gold, even a little less than that, that separates these two teams. If you're Average Joes, you're not out of this yet. It's just that, Core, I miss that conciseness, that efficient decision-making we saw from Average Joes in Game 1. It feels so long ago. I haven't seen it from them in 2 games.
That's what I was thinking. Is this time in Game 1, Average Joes were barreling down the mid lane, like looking for an end. It took them a few more minutes, I think, but they were just so dominantly in control of the game, and now it just seems to be spiraling out of their control. And I don't know what happened. Maybe it was that breaking point. Again, they had a pretty early lead. It looked like it was going to go the same path in game number 2, and that got broken around the same time I got broken, and that's where things changed. Maybe I was the problem for them. Maybe it's bad mojo for them, because so far they haven't bounced back from that moment. Even though I was able to reconnect, it doesn't seem like they've been able to really find that link to get back into this. And I don't know where to draw the line for them. I mean, maybe Nemesis and finding some targeted ults, but it's just the difficulty. You don't have the same amount of damage going on to Nehu at the beginning of a fight, right? So this Kukulkan is being a little more prolonged. His damage is lasting longer because he's not dying in the background, and that just seems to be something they don't know how to deal with. Dingodile hasn't gotten a good pluck. Uzi hasn't been able to get really consistent taunts, and so it's become a lot easier for Fishies to just kill them before they get to them.
It's been really efficient from Fishies in these last couple of fights. Still not out of reach, but in a good position. And I'm going to make sure, I'm not saying Average Joes have to dominate every game that they're in, but what I really saw that I liked was that it felt like there was this clear, concise shot calling, and they were all following around at the same time, making these moves together and making it hard for Fishies. It's been Fishies moving around with that kind of clinical efficiency since then, and it's really served them well. So we'll see if Average Joes can do anything to find it. Let's go through and do a bit of an item relic roundup here as well, as we get a great look at the old Ao Kwang skin here for Kukulkan. It's a blink for Leon. That makes him way less safe without that additional Aegis, and it really means they have to be the aggressor so that they can use it. It's a Sunder for Oceans, but he's landing that stun or locking someone in with that ultimate. They're adding all that extra damage and making it easier to kill, as Leon needs that Defender of Olympus just to survive.
You can see this Cthulhu ult just creating so much space, right? This is where things get really rough for you. What are you going to do to it? Dingodile's locked down.
What? Yeah, why is Dingodile in here? I didn't exactly see how he got stuck all in the middle of that, but he's not stuck there anymore. He has been sent back to base on an express trip, one way. Do not pass go as Chronic forced to retreat, but in comes the second wave. That's Oceans looking for the stun. The Trimmers lock down Ishtao, while the rest of the team can get here. Is Uzi, his dying act being used to save Ishtao. He's sent to the afterlife, and Ishtao will live. But this is what I mean. Fishies moving around the map as a unit core and really causing problems for the Joes.
I mean, Ishtao's TKO'd here, Uzi's gone, Dingodile's gone. This should be a pretty easy Fire Giant if you're trying to pick it up, right? I mean, maybe an Agni Bomb over the wall is something to worry about, but you just saw Desert's Fury. You know that's not nothing to, or anything to stress about. And so it's just walk over a ward, get caught out, see if Leon can get in there.
He did make it in, but was not able to contest. Fire Giant goes to Fishies. It's on all 5 members, and I like this. Looks like they're going to take Pyromancer and take a reset.
Man, a
exactly right. Not even going to worry about it. It's just Chronic backing over there, looking like any kind of objective, but I like it. They'll come out full healed and look for the push.
And again, a stagger kill. When I use that, it's look how far beyond Leon is going to be to respawn here. It's just free time that it's a 4v5, 30 seconds with a Fire Giant buff on all 5. It's just determining where do you want to go first. Most teams, and honestly it makes sense, go towards that left-hand side, take down that tower, try to focus down that Phoenix. Maybe they just knock down the last 3 tier 2 towers and then attempt for a Phoenix afterward. There's a lot of things you can juggle here, especially with the Phoenix, or I should say the Fury, going to be respawning here pretty shortly, so you've got so many places to bounce around and kind of choose that it makes sense. Again, objectives first, Fury second, but which objectives you get, I think, is going to be determined by the bounce back and fight back that you're going to get from Average Joe's here, which, like, as of lately, it hasn't been enough to make me think they can deter a full Phoenix push, but Leon will be back by that point, so it might take him a little while to truly lock that one down.
Looks like
Is this a drive-by Primal?
Yeah, I thought so, but looks like they're above it. Don't need it here at this point, as they can make a move towards the tower. Uzi looking to retreat. Look like Ishtal is not going to be able to make his back either. Instead, it's retreating from him as he just runs away from the aggression. If he can pull anyone from the tower, you love it, but it looks like he's going to take the back, and Fishies going to continue to make their push on tier 2s. Average Joe's don't like they're going to defend on the tier 2s. You want them just defending at Phoenix is here, or should they come out and slow them down on some of these tier 2s?
Look, they haven't been winning these fights in the jungle. I think you wait for the Phoenix. You want something that's a sixth man and very powerful behind you. The Phoenix is going to be able to do that work for you. A lot of damage that can come down magical and base as well, so and maybe is going to help you out just by giving it that damage, but I mean, Oceans doesn't seem to care about it.
Yeah, Dingodile's already been removed. He's died way too early in all of these fights. Ishtal was considering a flank, but that's not even possible anymore with how pushed up Fishies are. The Phoenix goes down cleanly. Griff does get a kill into Oceans and is looking for the retreat, but he is stuck inside a Chronic, and Nehu's the one that gets the kill. Fishies not considering an end, I wouldn't think, from here. Maybe they want to come around and grab these other towers. Looks like that is going to be the call. They'll retreat, heal up with FG and these Cupid Hearts, and head right for more towers.
Now, I think if you have both those towers down, you might be able to walk in there, but the Titan gets health for every tower still standing here, so yeah, go knock some of those down, right? Make sure you go in, because otherwise it's too much damage. Ishtal and Leon are dealing just enough that it's a threat, but not enough that you're really worried about them in a team fight, right? It's that weird middle ground of I don't want to fight you under Titan, but I do want to fight you because I know I'll win. And so now they can do exactly what they want, right? Tower, tower, Phoenix, then go back, get a Primal Fury, makes the Pyromancer, makes the Fire Giant easier to do. And then if they happen to have some time left over, about a minute and a half, you could probably go to knock down one more tower, or maybe push for that mid-Phoenix right now if they're a regroup.
Now let's see what the call here is for him. Looks like it is a bit of a full reset, so Fishies going to take a breather, probably come back next time around this fire. I mean, we're still 2 minutes away from it respawning, so they've got some time to work with. And if you're Average Joe score, I mean, we got to come up with some kind of prognosis here for this team, because they are struggling. They have not been able to, in 2 games, to deal with the Cthulhu, to deal with Kirmi, or to deal with Oceans, and that's been causing such big problems for them. They have to find a way to slow down the engage of Fishies so that they can stand up and fight on their 2 feet instead of being forced to run right from the beginning, but I just don't see how they do it.
Honestly, it's just such a difficult task to come through, and I really do think it unfortunately comes down to the fact that right now Leon Agni, I think, is a solid mid-pick. I don't think it fits this draft that well, and I don't think it fits against what they're trying to fight very well. I think if Nemesis had something that was going to hit very solid burst right after maybe an ult on to Chronic,
a little faster,
that would burn down this Cthulhu a little bit better. But right now, I mean, you ult, it's up to either Ishtal or Griff, really, to try and find that damage. Agni can do a lot, but it's not going to be the same, like you said, a little quicker, right? A Scylla Crush is going to get the same amount of damage as maybe 2 Agni Bombs out there faster in an instant. And so you need something like that to burn this down a little quicker. And admittedly, you have to be there as a group, and right now it's kind of felt a little shaky whether or not they've been able to go in as a full group on the side of Average Joe's. Again, the first game, it was clinical. They just always seem to be roaming together, but this time around, sometimes someone just gets caught out, and it doesn't seem to have much bearing as to why. They just happen to be in the wrong place, wrong time, and Fishies collapse on them because they've been running as a 4-pack for essentially 20 minutes now.
Yeah, even when Average Joes are able to find their setup, like a taunt coming from Uzi or a pluck from Dingodile, either the tank that did it is dying instantly, or they don't have the burst behind the tank to burn through whoever the taunt target is quickly enough. And Oceans elected to go for the Magai's Cloak. I think this is great. Going to make it so much harder for Average Joes to punish him on the engage going forward. And Fishy could just kind of post up and just wait on this fire. Average Joes are coming out, but man, I don't think they've got much of a dream of winning on neutral territory.
And yeah, you have to be very careful if you try to come in here. I mean, Dingodile has been maybe the biggest, I want to say culprit. I don't know if that's the proper term here, but you go in for a pluck, you have to be very careful who you grab, and you have to be very careful where you end up, because that, I think, has been what has led to those 4 deaths. And this is the other problem. Again, that area of denial, these AoEs coming out for Nehu. Yeah, it doesn't hurt Dingodile that much, but good luck getting close if you're Ishtao, Leon, or Griff, right? Like, you're not going to be able to walk through that the same way. And all the while, you have to worry about exactly that. Yeah, Doug's showing us where the fire minions are. There's a huge menu wave over there on right that it looks like Griff is going to go deal with. But with your Phoenix already low, you're getting pulled apart, and it looks like Uzi, the only one with that global ult, is going to have to back away. But that's plenty of time for Fishies to try and take this.
Yeah, I don't even know if I really want him to come back in, but it's Dingodile who goes in first to try and see what he can do. Defender of Olympus is there in response to keep him alive, and the Fire Giant still very, very low. Fishies managed to get the fire, but Leon takes care of Chronic. Maybe this could be their moment, but Dingodile has dropped as well. Solo traded for support plus FG in favor of Fishies. Uzi's going to fall as well. That's both the front line removed, but in comes Ishtao looking for a trade. They even get some stuns, but they just don't have the damage. Look how low Oceans and Rinjaru are. They just couldn't quite do it, and they're going to lose their left side Phoenix. Again, that's a great sequence for Fishies.
That oboe proc was almost enough there for Griff. Could have gotten it, but unfortunately it wasn't enough damage to lock it down, especially with that FG sustain that comes through. Once Chronic is off the board, that's typically the go button, right? Hey, Cthulhu's dead, let's try and get him. Unfortunately, then, just like you said, felt a little too late, right? You go in, and unfortunately, I mean, Rinjaru is 7-0-5. Like, no one's killing Cupid. You can't get to him because, well, guess what? Kyrmi's right in front of him at 5-1-10, and you can't get to either of the carries. Both mid and Rinjaru here are undead, or undying, I should say, while everybody else, you know, 1 death on the one front line, 1 death on the jungler. If you kill Oceans, that's great, but you're not getting a whole lot out of it, and that is a tanky Cabrakan to burn through. Same thing for Chronic. You finally get that kill, but you spend so much getting that there's nothing to do with the follow-up. And I think that's the biggest problem, is they don't have enough pin, realistically. I mean, you've got On Her doing everything you can. You even got Nemesis doing everything they can, but it just feels like for some reason they don't have the damage online right now. And when I look at the charts, it can't really be Agni. Like, everybody's doing pretty well. Nemesis is just having some struggles getting into the fight.
Absolutely. Starting to seem like average Joes are getting squeezed out time and time again. Fishies are setting up a trap here on the map for him? No, they're waiting on the wave to get pushed up. Just wouldn't see much need for a trap if I'm Fishies. Just go ahead and start pushing, but instead, looks like they're kind of retreating and regrouping for now. Not looking to go push just yet. They only got, what, 2 minutes left on this Fire Giant buff itself, but as a unit going back to get blue. Love to see this team really on the direct path right towards the end, but they're not making any mistakes. They're not splitting up. They're not giving average Joes any way back in and forcing average Joes to beat them here in this Phoenix defense.
Oh, it's just difficult. I mean, what are you going to be able to do here, right? Like, where are you going to defend? How are you going to do it? I'm trying to lock it down. That Sundering Spear being on Oceans. If there was a Sundering Spear on somebody here for average Joes, I'd like it a little more. Again, you know, you had highlighted it earlier, but Leon having that blink and no Aegis makes him a lot more susceptible to damage. There's not much to do to defend other than live.
Core, before you finish your point, Uzi was deleted from the map. That goes to show the damage that Fishies have at their disposal. Right side Phoenix, a distant memory. And if I'm Fishies, do you even bother with the formality, the dotting the I that is the mid Phoenix? It looks like they do. They'll grab this one as well, and average Joes just trying to struggle to find their way in. They don't even have the taunt. There's the pluck from Dingodile, and Chronic does end up low, but he has not yet been removed. Griff doesn't even hit the ground before he falls to the pin. Ishtao does finally get the damage on a Chronic, but Kyrmi is unstoppable. It's a double kill, and Leon gonna have a great view of his Titan going down, as there's nothing he can do alone. Fishies find the 2-1 victory over average Joes and Gore. This is a great point, that there's no one in the SCC, NA or EU, that you can overlook. They're all capable of taking sets.
Yeah, I think that one comes down, like, again, I gave the Agni a little bit of trouble earlier in the game, thinking the damage wasn't enough. At the end of the damage game, he was like 3rd on the chart, so he obviously was doing his job, at least in that department.
Sure. I
think it comes down, you know, you're on her not getting as much done, your duo lane as an entirely, like, Dingodile didn't have as big an impact as you would want out of a Sobek there. And when you look at the relics, a lot of the choices felt aggressive on the side of average Joes. And that was not a game where you were ever in a position to be aggressive, right? They felt like they were always on the back foot. And so I have to say congratulations to the other side. Fishies, they looked like the underdogs coming into this one, and especially after game number 1, but the last 2 games were really solid from them.
Really well played, Gabe. From congrats to Fishies on getting that first win to start off the season. We'll have everything broken down for you. Real quick break, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's us back at the end to close up that wonderful 3-game set between these two fantastic teams. Average Shows and Fishies really going at it there. And, you know, at the end of a nice long Smite game set, I love talking to my friends and family all about it. Maybe not the family, but if you're looking for some friends to talk to about all the latest SCC, SPL, SOC, whatever Smite-related action, you can do so by going down and following that link just below me there, discord.gg/Smite game. There are so many things that you can do in that Discord that I have even lost count. So there you go. Mifflin, how do we feel about that game?
Why'd you laugh at me, Blazy? I'm feeling pretty good about it, man. I mean, I'm not feeling nearly as good as the Fishies were, or maybe Kirmi in particular. Renjaru as well had a phenomenal match. I mean, I think Gore hit it best at the tail end there. Coming into that set, I thought the Fishies were really going to be the underdogs. I thought they were the challenger here. But as the set went on, I mean, that game was convincing to me.
Yeah, game number 1, we kind of played into that, right? And then the last 2 has just been pretty much all Fishies. Like, set number 2, they kind of had to warm into it, I feel like. But this game, like, I don't want to say it was a shutout, but, like, what did Elion do this game?
I mean, he did the most damage on his team, all right? You can't trick me into talking schmack about my boy Leon. Sure, maybe he could have done a little bit more damage. Maybe the positioning could have changed up a little bit throughout the course of that match, but that was a tough-fought battle that really was losing on a lot of sides. Ishtao was struggling in the jungle. Uzi was getting out-rotated pretty consistently. And Griff really was kind of getting the Renjaru special over in the duo lane. So I think that, if anything, a team that loses together also wins together, or something along those lines. Some idiom that means that it's not about the singular player.
Yeah, but for sure, just to clarify, I wasn't throwing any shade at Elion in particular to make me out to be some sort of monster, man. My point being, Elion just couldn't really find the impact. Whilst he got the damage off, my point being, there weren't really much kills translated through onto that. As you can see, 1, 2, and 6 at the moment. Most assists on the board, which maybe should make me eat my words there, but on the flip side, look at Kirmi and look at Renjaru. They have, what is that? I can't do maths. That's 15 kills between them there, Mifflin.
That's too many. Too many if you're trying to beat somebody, right? That seems like Renjaru and Kirmi kind of got to have as much fun as they wanted to throughout the course of that game. 22,000 damage, by the way, and only 2,000 healing. We thought that this Cupid was going to be a utility pick when we were talking about the P's and B's, Blazy. Seems like that's not really how it panned out, right? Renjaru trying to make us, maybe we owe him a little bit of apology, huh?
Maybe a little bit. Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, when we were talking about these teams earlier on today, Mifflin, and someone said, who are the ones to watch on this team? I shouted out Renjaru. He pops off every now and again. And what did he do in this last game, Mifflin?
Popped off.
He popped off. You gosh darn right he did. I know this man has the potential to do this, and he absolutely showed us today why that is. But ladies and gents, let's go ahead and have a look. This is what we've had this week. We've had some pretty cool games up in the EU side of the bracket, and some arguably cooler games coming out of NA. Herculean Hooves versus Sturdy Artisans, while on paper was the most exciting, actually turned out, Mifflin, you may feel free to disagree with me here, but actually turned out to be probably one of the less exciting games we had this today.
I mean, I still think it's pretty crazy that Baskin and the boys fell down in the first week of the SCC, right? I mean, what was their record last split? Maybe 1 set loss throughout the entirety of it. So I was pretty pumped seeing the Herculean, or the Sturdy Artisans rather, able to bring it to them there. But I gotta say, our set was pretty exciting, man. What was it, like 2 hours of raw gameplay, back and forth matches, Winter Dogs and Tiburones. That was my favorite.
For sure, it was definitely a lot of fun. Let's have a look at where these games leave everyone in the standings going into the second week. It's not a lot of numbers to analyze, but from these, I can see that 3 out of 6 teams have a 100% win rate, and that is impressive, Mifflin.
Now we're going to move on into the second schedule, week 2 schedule coming up right here. I'm pretty pumped to see Pandemonium up against Elysium. That's going to be a huge match coming out of the EU SCC. Anytime I get to watch the Elysium play in general is going to be a huge up for me. I mean, watching Adapting play, Terrorem, Trix Tank, I've been watching these guys for the better part of 6, 7, 8 years. Any opportunity I can, I'm going to tune in.
For sure, I'm really excited to see how Sturdy Artisans and Herculean Hooves deal with Average Joes and Tiburones, who, I mean, 2 teams who we have seen today still need a bit of a ways to go before, personally, I think they can stack up to teams like the Herculean Hooves and the Artisans. But this week was a pretty solid start, so maybe next week they go in, they take a game or 2. Who knows what can happen.
Who knows, man? I mean, the SCC is so ephemeral, so hard to lock down. The meta seems to be shifting every single week. When we're coming into a new season, I think the SCC has always given us our first taste of that emergent meta that comes through here. I'm always so pumped to see what they're able to do, whether or not the SPL players are keeping track of what's happening here as well. It's just a good time, man. I mean, anytime I get to participate in Smite Esports is going to bring a smile to my face.
Well, unfortunately, Mifflin, we're going to have to wait a little while until we get our next parcel of Smite Esports. We've got another week to go until these teams play each other again. But until then, ladies and gents, don't forget to join the Smite Discord and have a fantastic night. We'll see you next week. Peach it.